in a bid to push across the message that you cannot beat a child and ask them not to cry, to register their displeasure for governance in Nigeria, Nigerians, young and old, have taken to the streets around the country to protest, and we'll be bringing the report of this as the hashtag #EndBadGovernance continues to become a conversation on X. I'm Olive Emodi, and for the next 4 hours, we'll be here on Breakfast Central to bring you the Citizens Report, as well as heading to all our correspondents across the country.
Absolutely, and this morning we will be x-raying the protests from yesterday, the possibilities that they will continue today and continue for the next 10 days, as stated, and also the government's reaction to it, the possible damage to lives and property that it might also lead to, with newspaper reports reporting about 10, 12, maybe even 17 lives that were lost just yesterday. These are some of the things that we'll be looking at today in a very, very extensive coverage of the #EndBadGovernance protest, amongst other things that we're discussing. I am Osalgi Ogbawan, of course, welcoming you to Breakfast Central on this Friday morning, the second day in the month of August.
What does the one, what would you say the one has looked like for you? For me, I would say that, first of all, it started out really calm. I don't know that I expected the amount of energy that I saw yesterday. If I had judged from the time we all came to the office, seeing the way the roads were, we had thought maybe, yes, there would be people to turn up. I had hoped that there would be no violence in different parts of the country. But Osalge, putting it mildly, would say, I would say that my heart was broken hearing the account of people sharing their experiences in Nigeria. And even more heart-wrenching is the fact that up until now, we haven't still heard anything from our president. We are seeing different governors speaking up, different political leaders speaking up. It would seem that they're speaking up, acting as the mouthpiece of the president. But the number one man who is a citizen of the nation, and like the APC people like to call him, or some of the followers like to refer to him as father of the nation, has not yet said anything to people. And it sends across the message that maybe he just doesn't care. And this is something we've been talking about every day. You would always say, where is Mr. President? We have been asking. So I think the feelings that I take away from day one would be feelings of heartbreak and fear of what the next 9 days will look like, because people are angry. We thought it was going to be a Gen Z protest, but in an interesting twist, we have seen a lot older people participating in this protest. I don't know if you saw the clip of the man who decided to strip naked. And whilst the commentary was mixed, for me it was just, people are hurt, people are angry, and people are in a way trying to convey their message in whatever way possible.
Well, two things. First of all, I didn't, I wouldn't describe it as a Gen Z protest. I think it is generally an expression.
No, it's not. No, it was initially
anger.
I had thought that it was going to be a Gen Z protest, because we had had a lot more younger people in time past, especially looking at NSAS protests. Yes, there were older people, but it was a lot more younger people. Yeah, but here, it's a across generation. That's what we'll see.
Yeah, I'm saying, I didn't expect that. I believe that it was an expression of the hunger and frustration, that Nigerian people have with their government. A lot of the conversations, mostly start on social media, so maybe that's why, anybody would have that expectation. But it is mostly about the frustration that Nigerians have with the current Nigerian administration, the current Nigerian government. And I've said it a couple of days ago that this is the report card of the Tinubu administration 14 months into office. There's no other sign. There's nothing else that you need to look at as your report card. If there's going to be a maybe annual report card of a government, this is the report card of the Tinubu administration, or Tinubu government rather, 14 months into post-inauguration. And it tells their ability to not just manage the affairs of the country, but also manage the idea of a protest and manage the idea that not everybody would be happy with the way that the country has been managed, and how they manage that detail. This is also a clear sign. The Punch newspaper reports this morning 17 people feared killed, and of course firms counting losses. Other newspapers report varying figures, but this is really just a very, very heartbreaking turn of events, from yesterday. No life should be lost for any reason whatsoever when people decide to protest against, government. So I'm hoping, even if, not very many people will have faith, but I'm hoping that there would be proper investigations into the loss of these lives that have been reported. The 10, 12, the 17, nobody's sure exactly what the numbers are. But I'm hoping that there would be a proper investigation into these killings and into the loss of lives. And, of course, we can start from there. Aside that, yes, it is very important that Mr. President speaks with the Nigerian people. And I said this weeks ago, that it is very, very important. His voice at this time is very important. And I still do not understand, as a Nigerian, as a journalist, as a person who has followed the political scene in Nigeria in the last long while, why they have chosen to, have Mr. President not speak with the Nigerian people. I have tried to understand it, and I've said either that is, they just have poor communication methods with the Nigerian people, or they just have not figured out exactly what to say or how to say it. It's either of both. They either do not regard the Nigerian people enough to have that conversation with them and have Mr. President speak with the Nigerian people, or they just haven't figured out exactly how to say it. Hearing from the Minister of the FCT, Nyesom Wike, who was not voted by any Nigerian, he was appointed by Mr. President, is not what Nigerians want to hear. Nobody wants to hear from Nyesom Wike or any other person. Nigerians would love to hear from Mr. President. Assuring words, consoling words. At this point, he should be consoler-in-chief, not just commander-in-chief. And again, I know you just mentioned it, Olive. I don't agree, and I don't subscribe to the whole concept of father of the nation. A person ran for election. A person campaigned for many, many months to be president, to be elected to serve. The idea of father of the nation takes away some level of responsibility and accountability that person should have to the Nigerian people, or reduces the amount of, the level of demands that the Nigerian people should have of that person. And I don't subscribe to it. I believe that a person who's serving the Nigerian people in the office of the president or in the, as a state governor or in any capacity should remember that your role is as a servant to the Nigerian people. And if you feel uncomfortable with that role, then another person, should step into that position. So once again, I'm hoping that we're able to manage the emotions, manage the excesses that would come from a protest. It's not just to the Nigerian police, also to the people who are out there protesting. It is important that you remember that no life should be lost because of a protest for a better Nigeria. Nobody wants to mourn a brother or a sister or a father or a mother. Nobody wants to lose a sibling because of a protest for a better Nigeria. So please, a reminder that we should be as calm as possible if we have to be out there protesting, which is your civil responsibility, or rather constitutionally guaranteed right. Please be careful and please be peaceful.
I just also ask Minister Nyesom Wike, who has said that he is now very aware of the fact that this protest is sponsored and that the protest was sponsored by a certain senator because the senator went to serve food to the people. We'd like more clarity regarding Senator Nyesom Wike's claims about a certain senator that has sponsored the protest. There was a lot of conversation as well in Abuja regarding the court order as to where exactly the protest was meant to hold, a particular stadium. And, we could see a lot of protesters arguing and saying that if the court order says that it's meant to hold at the stadium, we're in the stadium, we're within the premises of the stadium, you cannot force us into the stadium. So it's really very heart-wrenching to see the way that the protest has played out in different parts of the country. But one thing that we can agree is that, I saw someone who said that this protest is showing it's the face of hunger. It's on the faces of people. What this protest is about is on the faces of people, the hunger. People cannot feed, people cannot afford. We're saying 3 square meals is really a long shot. They're talking about accommodation and how that has affected the basic cost of living. I've been house hunting, and the prices are quite ridiculous, to put it mildly, to share what the cost of housing is on the island. And then we're having people's houses that are being renovated for billions. So
let's put this thing in perspective. Every single person has been affected by the complete new reality with regards to Nigeria's economy and the cost of living crisis that we're dealing with. Every single person on every level. But if we take ourselves out of it, for every one of us who is fortunate to have a roof over our heads and have some level of comfort, and imagine what it is like for those people who live in shanties, for those people who live in, and it's not because we're not important. Every single person is important. Every person's perspective is. For those people who were surviving on 1 meal a day in the previous administration, they no longer have that 1 meal a day that they are sure of. Those people whose daily commutes to work used to cost them 300 naira, maybe, is probably now costing them 900 to 1,000 naira. And it's not because they have had any increment in their salaries or in their income. The people who were sure that they can, halfway through work, walk to the woman at the junction and buy a meal for 400 naira or 700 naira, no longer have that meal to eat. The people who were certain, and I heard someone say yesterday that before they were certain at least they will have food to eat every day. Now they can go 2 days without having a proper meal.
That's the unfortunate reality of what it is. And I'm hoping that beyond all the conversations that we're having here, that our politicians are able to feel the pulse of the Nigerian people. It is this pulse that we try to show when we head to the streets and bring reports and have them speak to the camera when we interview them, that we can feel the pulse, that you can see the man who says that he would rather be on the streets because his son, who is very talented, who's a talented coder, he cannot afford to sponsor him. Good thing is Great Samaritans on social media have risen to the occasion to try and raise funds for him. But for how many people can we do that for?
Yeah.
How many people can we do crowdfunding for on social media? And this is not in any way, shape, or form criticizing those. This is applauding those who have decided to use their platforms to ensure that, you know, they raise funds to source for this man to be able to help him and his son get the quality of life that they deserve. But to mention that it is not the responsibility of the people to do this. The government has a responsibility to create an enabling environment to ensure that people can live decent quality of lives, and ensure that they can provide for their children the quality of life that they should, the quality of education that they deserve. But right now, we're not just talking about education, even feeding the basics. So I'm hoping that our politicians are watching this and can feel the pain and the pang of the old woman who is out there in the streets with her pot demonstrating and crying. I hope that they can see the old man who is stripping naked and, you know, in a way and sense, ridding himself of shame because there's nothing left really for him to fight for. I hope they can see the young person who says, all die and I die. If I stay home, I die. If I come out, I die. That they can see that a lot of this is not born out of the fact that they like to protest or they just want to be on the streets, but that people are really wholeheartedly, genuinely frustrated, and we deserve a decent quality of life.
I'm sorry, Olive. And Nigerians do not believe in the narrative that this is a global economic crisis. That is where the major, or one of the places where the major trust deficit has continued to be depleted with the conversation concerning government and its people. This is not a situation where anybody can be told and forced to believe that it's a global economic crisis or many countries in the world are dealing with it. That's not, what the reality is. That as much as there's a global economic crisis in many parts of the world, Nigeria's case in particular looks very much like it's a direct result of the failure of government.
And, in addition to that, I would say that I can understand that there is a global problem around the world, right? Nigeria has its own unique challenges, but I think the greatest challenge that Nigeria is experiencing is not just the fact that we are part of a global system that is facing economic challenges, but we have leaders, we have a leadership default, leaders who do not understand what leadership is. Because I think, or I would like to think, that if the leaders were saying to us that these are hard times, you endure before it gets better, and we're exemplifying that in the way that they are cutting the cost of governance, I do not think that we probably would have resulted to this. If Nigerians could, if we didn't have to have conversations about 90 billion naira hajj, if we didn't have to have conversations about billions allocated to renovate the vice president's apartment, we didn't have to talk about the potential or the need to buy a presidential jet. If you as our leaders are not exemplifying the suffering that the average Nigerian is suffering, do not expect the average Nigerian to understand. Nigerians will not understand. Huh? It doesn't make sense. So it has to be that if we are suffering, everybody is suffering together. You can't be suffering, you are buying brand new vehicles for yourselves. We can't be suffering and then you're saying you're living the best quality of lives. And then you have a Senate leader, a Senate president that comes out to say, whilst people are protesting, let them go and protest, we'll be eating. If nothing else, that exemplifies the height of insensitivity that one can show to our people, to his people. It shows that you are not a part of it. It's reflective of what it is. They don't understand. They don't feel the pulse of the people.
Again, because we need to go for news, but again, all of this that we are seeing is the direct report card 14 months after inauguration of the ability of the current government in Nigeria to not just run and manage the resources and manage a nation of 200 million people, but also manage dissenting voices and manage those who do not agree with their policies. And again, It's not because nobody, can be convinced that it's global economic crisis. Like you've mentioned, it is mostly because Nigerians have seen that there's seemingly a lot of dishonesty on the side of the government. There are many, many ways that the government could have managed things better, managed the stories coming from the Aso Rock better, but they just don't seem to have gotten it right. Anyway, we have a lot of experts joining us today that will be able to explain these things better. Let's quickly get into and share with you breakfast headlines, and then right after that, we'll share with you what our top stories are for today. The Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, has accused the End Bad Governance protesters of disobeying a subsisting court order by refusing to confine their protest to the Moshood Abiola Stadium in Abuja. The minister, while speaking to newsmen after an emergency security meeting with heads of security agencies, says that the protests were not as peaceful as promised by the organizers, but had to be contained by security operatives as the protesters tried to make their way into several government facilities.
So what happened today, where the conveners or protesters, as the case may be, tried to move into the Ego Square, which is against the court ruling. And if not for the efforts of the security agencies, we don't know what would have happened. Now, look at the loss of lives in Kaduna. See what happened in Kano. And for the vigilance of security agencies, and such a thing happens in the FCT, what would you think people will say? Here we have international communities carrying out their businesses, residing in FCT. So we think that this country belongs to all of us. We think that we must work according to the rule of law. And working according to the rule of law is okay.
In Kaduna State, the State Police Command has arrested 25 protesters following the End Bad Governance in Nigeria protest on Thursday. Meanwhile, the state government has denied the imposition of a 24-hour curfew in the state. The protesters vandalized government property, including the office of the Kaduna State Traffic Law Enforcement Agency along the Sokoto Road in the heart of the state. And hundreds of youths have barricaded major streets and government house in Sokoto metropolis, chanting different songs in the ongoing nationwide protest against bad governance. The destruction of the pavement wire separating Dualai's Ahmadu Bello Way and Sokoto Road and the involvement of numerous underage participants characterized the initial peaceful hunger protest in Sokoto State. And now to Ogun State, where youths in the state capital, Abeokuta, have exercised their fundamental human rights to protest, holding up placards at a brief rally at the Moshood Abiola Stadium in the state capital. Many expressed their anger and frustration over socio-economic hardship in the country. The situation in Abeokuta is said to have remained calm as roads were deserted, except for a few vehicles plying the roads, and commercial and business activities were brought to a halt, while security operatives were deployed to strategic locations in the state to forestall any breakdown of law and order. The Inspector General of Police, Kayode Egbetokun, has condemned the mass uprising, looting, destruction of property, and attempts to take over government buildings on Thursday by some individuals protesting against the hardship under President Bola Tinubu's administration. Egbetokun, who disclosed this during a live broadcast in response to the protest, ordered all police units to be on red alert to ensure public safety.
Several warnings based on actionable intelligence at our disposal indicated that some groups claiming to be mobilizing for peaceful protests while doing so with violent undertones, refusing to cooperate with the police on measures to take intelligence. The police advised that the protests should be shelved at this instant. Where the organizers insisted on going on with the protest, they were advised to stage the protests in confined locations. This would have enabled the police to provide adequate protection for the protesters and isolate the criminals whose intention was to loot and destroy in the name of a protest. This we were doing in furtherance of our duty to protect lives and property and maintain law and order. While we affirm the constitutional rights of citizens to assemble and express their views on issues of national importance, we were wary about the dangers posed by agitation instigated by some individuals who have shown tendencies to be disloyal to the government of the day. Despite our suspicions, we showed good faith through professional conduct by providing security at strategic locations, all aimed at ensuring peaceful conduct during the protest, as the promoters pledged. Our men, deployed nationwide, went out with a clear brief to ensure that no one...
Now, some Nigerians living in South Africa have voiced their support for the End Bad Governance protest in Nigeria. They say it's high time the Nigerian government listened to its citizens. This followed widespread protests by citizens that spread across the country on Thursday.
Distribution of basic amenities, education, food, security, maintenance of rule of law. If these things are there, there will be no ground for protest. But the problem we have is bad governance in Africa. And I can tell you, it's not one country's issue. It is the mentality that Africans have to change. The leaders of Africa, putting the people's interests above personal interests. Because we see leaders that go into leadership, go into...
Now, in Guinea, the lawyers for Guinea's ex-dictator Moussa Dadis Camara said on Thursday they would appeal his conviction for war crimes against humanity over mass killings and rapes at a 2009 political rally. A court found Dadis Camara guilty on Wednesday and sentenced him to 20 years behind bars following a landmark trial. And that's all at this moment. Stay with us for the rest of Breakfast Central this morning. I am Osaogi Ogbonwa.
Welcome back to Breakfast Central. And now we begin our reports. As we did mention earlier, we are going to different parts of the country to find out a summary of day one's reports regarding the protest, the End Bad Governance protest. And then we'll also look at what the projections for day two are. Now, heading to our correspondent in Abuja, we have Emmanuel Bagudu, who was on standby covering the day one of the protest in Abuja. Good morning, Emmanuel. What was the day one of the protest looking like in terms of, you know, how relatively peaceful or not it might have been?
Yeah, Abuja's protesters are very decent. The FCT administration have done a lot to, reduce or control any kind of damage to the barest minimum. I think the only clash we had yesterday was just the fact that the protesters don't want to be confined inside the National Stadium because they're afraid, something can happen in the stadium and then there's no way they can cry out. So that's why they have to find their way into the city center towards the Eagle Square. They were denied into the Eagle Square because, of course, the Eagle Square is very close to the presidential villa, just within the 3-arm zone. And then, of course, that's where when police started firing tear gas. But I think that has been taken as, the correction has been taken. We believe that today such mistake may not happen.
Yeah, I mean, but is there some clarity as to what exactly may have triggered the use of tear gas? Were the protesters unruly? Did the police feel threatened? Was it a situation where they felt like they needed to immediately disperse these protesters for a reason that we're not clear yet?
Yes, what actually caused the tear gassing was the fact that the protester wanted to use the Eagle Square. The FCT Minister said they should not be allowed to use the Eagle Square. He actually said the Eagle Square is not for protest, that if they want to protest, they should use the National Stadium. So since they noticed that they cannot be allowed to go into the Eagle Square, they started protesting around the 3-arm zone. The 3-arm zone, that's the building within the National Assembly complex, the Federal Secretariat, and then the Villa and the Supreme Court. So the police were afraid that if they allow this mob to continue, they may end up going straight into the villa or even the National Assembly complex. So they have to start sending them back to the National Stadium, and the protesters were not interested in going back to the National Stadium. So the incident happened within the 3-arm zone. Police have to bring in more reinforcement, more soldiers to protect the entire 3-arm zone. In fact, the 3-arm zone, you can also have the force headquarters also within the 3-arm zone. So those are very, very sophisticated and heavy, very significant government facilities.
We have reports that
the police cannot afford to allow.
Yeah, we have reports that the court had given an instruction as to where the protest will hold. Like you did say, the Moshood Abiola Stadium was the designated protest area. And even though we saw a number of protesters refusing to go into the stadium because there were conversations about detonation of IEDs. We're seeing different mixed conversations on social media. But talk to us about some of the major complaints you had seen. Because, yes, we can say that different people have different demands, but from some of the placards you saw them carry, which would you say were some of the most popular complaints that you saw? And, are there any is there any way that the minister, the FCT minister, is weaved into this conversation?
Yes. A lot of complaints, issues raised during the protest. Of course, Abuja is not like Lagos. The issue of joblessness is there, the issue of hunger, the high cost of living in Abuja has tripled, and of course, we have a lot of destitutes coming in from neighboring Kaduna State, Katsina, Sokoto, Plateau State, Kogi. Those people that are affected by banditry within the villages, they find their way into the city center. Abuja is neighboring all these states, Niger State, Nasarawa State. So that's why we're seeing a lot of clashes, a lot of fights. Because we have a lot of destitutes. These boys that are jobless, these beggars on the streets, they took advantage of this protest and came into the city center. Most of them have been driven away by terrorism from their communities. We saw the picture of that, the video of that woman with a baby who came in from Sokoto. That's Joshua's story. It was Sokoto with a newborn baby, a nursing mother who was protesting. I'm glad she was later arrested by the police because you can't bring, of course, a baby into a protest scene. So those issues of joblessness, hunger, is making the FCT administration, governance very difficult because FCT administration have to contain with IDPs who are coming in from different states. Abuja is accommodating them every day, and it's not really funny, especially at this time of the protest. So most of the issues you see being raised during the protest in FCT is the issue of hunger and starvation. And it's coming in from all these people that have been, displaced by either disaster or by insecurity or terrorism.
I mean, the reason that, of course, they even exist is also a failure of government. They didn't just wake up one morning and turn to IDPs, out of their own accord. It's because, of course, government's failure. That's why we're even talking about IDPs in Nigeria, of all countries. And it's not IDPs that government seems to be working tirelessly to, at least lift them out of that situation and make their lives better. I saw the report done by the BBC, I believe, in Katsina State, where former President Buhari comes from, that's talking about 4.4 million malnourished children. It's a very, very heartbreaking report that if you can search for it, you should watch it. Very heartbreaking. And that is the reality of a state where the former president comes from. He was president for 8 years. They currently have a new governor. And these are the realities that have existed for many years, without necessarily seeing sincere and direct government action to change, that reality. So, I mean, if you have these number of unemployed, hungry, frustrated people, in times when there is meant to be a protest, you will see people come out. The reason that you have millions of people available to protest is because there's millions of people who are hungry and frustrated and, just completely tired of the situation. Can you give us any insight as to what it is like in the other parts of northern Nigeria? I've heard about the number of people, some people who were shot in different parts of northern Nigeria. Do you have any information as to any of that?
Yes. In neighboring Kaduna State, we know that we have a lot of issues in Kaduna State. Insecurity is still there. And then, of course, we have a little bit of political upheaval going on. I mean, you ask yourself, what has the business of protesters got to do with this Kashmir Ibrahim House, Government House, Kaduna? Why will a protester go and be climbing the fence of a government house? I mean, those are the issues that you also look at. Political thuggery has come into the system. I am from Kaduna State. I know that this state have been suffering from political thuggery for a very long time. And that has been the reason why we have banditry, having a field day in the state. So it is expected that such will happen in Kaduna State. So it means that the police security officials in that state have a lot of work to do. Because I'm happy the governor have imposed a 24-hour curfew, Governor Obasanjo, because the issue, the insecurity of Kaduna State has been an issue that even a toddler knows that times like these are very perilous moments in the state. Yeah, so Kaduna State, I'm aware that there were shootouts and a couple of number of persons, which I can't actually pick up the particular number, were killed. A lot are injured. I have a lot of friends who told me that they have some persons they know that were shot and they are actually being treated at the Borno Specialist Hospital. And of course, in Kano, when you look at Kano, again, where we're just trying to, grappling with the reality of emirate crisis, we still have disgruntled people who feel their emir was removed, and they also have other issues that has to do with hunger. So you should expect what you saw in the NCC newly built office, state office, where people have to break in and, pick up a lot of belongings. But I'm happy the security officers are on top of their game. They go in and they made a lot of arrests. And then it really shows that the lessons from yesterday were learned. We have a lot to expect today.
Yeah.
All right. Let's quickly talk about the FCT Minister and the role that he's played in all of this. He's been speaking a lot lately to the media. Do you think that he's been speaking to the citizens in Abuja? Do the citizens of Abuja believe him? And do we know for sure? I'm sure that Deji, we'll have Deji Adeyanju joining us shortly. Maybe he can speak to that one regarding the sponsoring of protests. But, how have the people felt, reacting to Nyesom Wike's comments so far? Do they believe him and do they feel comforted by the FCT Minister's utterances?
Yes, the Nyesom Wike is not having a nice time right now, because this happens when he's actually going around for his town hall meeting at the 6th Municipal Area Council of the FCT. It happens at the period where he's trying to be more closer to the people. And so he's not finding this funny at all. So I think it's a time that he's having a sleepless night, because from yesterday, his body language actually shows that he's on his feet to make sure that there is no any crisis in the FCT.
All right.
Now, his speech yesterday was the fact that he still wants these protesters to adhere to the order that they should go and protest at the National Stadium. And we didn't see him making any kind of a plea or making it diplomatic. He's just saying that they should go back to the National Stadium. And he also appreciates them, of course, for even controlling it compared to other states. So, but for the fact that we have not seen any meeting point between the protesters and government forces, including the likes of the FCT Minister, whether they are really ready to accept being confined inside the Moshood Abiola Stadium to just stay there and protest, we have not really seen that happen yet.
Okay, and I'm sure that
looking out for today. And
I'm sure that another angle, we're going to be looking at another angle regarding the constitution or the court order regarding this location for the protest. And the Adeyanju is on standby to have that conversation with us. But for now, Emmanuel Bagudu, thank you. Do stay well. We'll look forward to joining you much later to bring updated reports on today's protest. All right. Nigeria's hunger protest, which kicked off yesterday with hundreds of youths taken to major roads in cities across the country, quickly turned violent on its first day. The protest, aimed at addressing economic hardship and government policies, descended into chaos and destruction, leaving a trail of devastation in its wake. News Central's comprehensive coverage from multiple states reveals that violence primarily erupted in the northern regions and the Federal Capital Territory. Kano, Borno, Yobe, and Nasarawa were among the states where protests turned violent, with reports of burning vehicles, looting, police deploying tear gas, and live gunshot rounds to disperse protesters. Inspector General of Police IGP Kayode Egbetokun condemned the event, stating that hoodlums disguised as protesters attacked police stations, looted warehouses, and government facilities, characterizing the incidents as a mass uprising and looting rather than legitimate protest.
Warnings based on actionable intelligence at our disposal indicated that while some groups claiming to be mobilizing for peaceful protests while doing so with violent undertones, refusing to cooperate with the police on measures to take intelligence, the police advised that the protests should be shelved at this instant. Where the organizers insisted on going on with the protest, they were advised to stage the protests in confined locations. This will have enabled the police to provide adequate protection for the protesters and isolate the criminals whose intention was to loot and destroy in the name of a protest. This we were doing in furtherance of our duty to protect lives and property and maintain law and order. While we have found the constitutional rights of citizens to assemble and express their views.
Joining us to talk about the protest in Abuja is lawyer and human rights advocate Deji Adeyanju. Good morning, Mr. Adeyanju. Thank you for joining us. We did see you yesterday on the protest grounds, sort of appealing to both protesters as well as law enforcement regarding the court order. So let's start from the court order. Talk to us about what the court order said. Have you seen the court order, and you know how well it was being adhered to yesterday?
Yes, the Commissioner of Police, thank you for having me first. The Commissioner of Police served me the court order at the venue of the protest yesterday. I have analyzed and reviewed the court order, and I have seen that the court, has restricted protesters to the National Stadium. The court order, contrary to what the police was saying, did not say protesters should be inside the National Stadium. All that is needed is for protesters to be within the vicinity of the National Stadium, which was what I was trying to, even before I was served the court order, tell the security agencies who were at the Moshood Abiola Stadium yesterday. But unfortunately, while we had advised the protesters a day before, when we saw the news, even before seeing the order, we had advised them to take steps to comply with the order of the court, since it's a positive order. No matter how dissatisfied they are, or no matter what they say about the order, though interim in nature, we advise them as their lawyer that they should take steps to obey the order. The protesters, in their stride, actually took steps to obey the order. They had insisted they were going to go to the Eagle Square, and we told them that no, that as law-abiding citizens, they should go to the Moshood Abiola Stadium, which they did. While we were having this conversation and heated debate with the police, a senior ranking member of the security forces told the protesters that they should not agree to go into the stadium, because if they go into the stadium, the security agencies were planning to lock them inside the stadium, and that they were also going to bring thugs that would block the stadium. So while we were having this heated conversation, lo and behold, we saw some security Hilux vehicles. They brought 6 buses, big coastal buses with thugs, to the vicinity of the National Stadium, just a few meters away from where the protesters were. This was what infuriated the protesters, and the protesters felt they were no longer safe in the vicinity of the National Stadium. And a decision was reached that they should go to the 3-arm zone, which has more security. So the protesters were practically forced out of the Moshood Abiola Stadium, and the security agencies are to blame for conveying thugs to the Moshood Abiola Stadium.
All right, we'll come back into the details of the protest proper, but I want us to still settle on the court order for a little bit. The court had given an ex parte order restraining them from, protesting at any other location but the Moshood Abiola Stadium. Talk to us about the process by which that order was gotten. Would you say that that process was one that is, you approve of the methods? Because there might be a possibility, now that you've raised and highlighted the point that the court order said they should protest at the Moshood Abiola Stadium, but did not specify that they must be inside. What if as at yesterday, there was another court order, or there's a process today that then ensures that another court order is issued to insist that protesters go inside. So talk to us about the mode by which that order was gotten.
Well, I totally, do not want to in any way disregard or be seen to be disrespecting the positive order of the court. That's why I kept insisting that the protesters obey the positive order of the court. However, I have issues with the mode and the method that the order was gotten, and my issues are that, the right of the citizens, which the Court of Appeal had already affirmed in a case with similar nature, similar facts, and I thought that the court will avail itself to the decided judicial precedent, or in the AMPP case, where the court has said that protesters cannot be restricted to a particular location, and that the right to protest cannot be, it cannot be donated by security agencies, or government. That this right is a fundamental right that is enshrined in the Constitution. So, the majority of the protesters are even saying that they will not obey the order because the order is at variance with the Court of Appeal decision on the same subject matter. But we had to be urging them and pleading with them to obey the positive order of the court, though interim, and obtained by ex parte, when the other parties were supposed to be directly affected. Another issue that the protesters are raising is that Damilare and some people were the ones who were joined in the suit. That the idea of calling Nigerians persons unknown does not apply to them, and that once Nigerians are not joined specific times, for instance, there are many comrades who were there yesterday, who their names are very well known to the government, and they were not joined in the suit. So, and when an order is given to a party not joined to a suit, how then does the order become binding on them? So that was another argument. And should they get another order today, now specifically restricting protesters inside the stadium? The problem is that the government has made the national stadium unsafe for protesters, and protesters are not likely, especially for Abuja, to confine themselves in the national stadium.
All right. I want to also just clarify, because you just mentioned Omoyele Sowore. So I want to also ask, I mean, in the build-up to yesterday, the government had been asking for, who are the leaders of the protest and people that they can dialogue with, I believe, to some extent. So I want to ask, if there is some leadership to the protest, maybe in Abuja alone or across the country, what role yourself have played yesterday? Are you playing the role of a leader of the protesters yesterday? Is Omoyele Sowore playing the role of a leader of the protesters, in Abuja? Or there's, you're simply just participating? That's one. And then also share with us, what happened yesterday? What triggered the use of tear gas?
Yes, so basically, this protest does not have specified leaders yet, but the protest is going to be slightly different from the NSAS protest, because we want a situation where we'll be able to get some deliverables, and that is why we have said today, if government shows intent, if government is determined to ensure that demands of the protesters are met, we will speak with the organizers of the protest, and we will talk to them on possibility of meeting government, so that it does not end, the struggle does not end only on the streets. The government has to show commitment to meeting demands of the protesters. Having said that, your correspondent was with us throughout yesterday, Manuel Bagudu. I'm surprised that he was saying earlier that the reason why the protesters were attacked by security agencies was because he referred to the protesters as mob. I was so disappointed in his analysis, because the protesters conducted themselves so properly here in the FCT, from the National Stadium to when the decision was taken that protesters were no longer safe with the presence of thugs at the National Stadium, to going all the way to the Eagle Square. In fact, the protesters were attacked unprovoked. The tear gas canister, gunshots was all over the place, unprovoked. Unarmed protesters just attacked like that. Same thing in Yanya. people were just protesting, and the security agencies began to fire, live ammunitions in the air, tear gas all over the place, and this is, I don't see why the police must always make protests turn violent in this country. All across the country, almost 14 protesters were killed yesterday by security agencies. Completely uncalled for. Completely uncalled for. Majority of the violence witnessed, the police are to blame. The security agencies are to blame for the violence witnessed. We had warned them since last week. We had been warning the government not to recruit thugs. That because the situations in the country is quite different from the NSAS period when people, when thugs would be recruited, and they will come and attack protesters and go home. That the thugs, since last week, will be issuing this warning, that the thugs will not return home this time around, that they will loot places if they are recruited. And we have seen that in some places, although the analogy and the analysis by the federal police that warehouses were looted is a complete lie. There is no evidence anywhere to show that any warehouse of government in the country has been looted. The center that was looted in Kano, government thugs that were recruited by the government were the ones who did this. We had warned them, and government is still to blame for this.
All right. Before we go on, because I would like that you speak a little bit more about this thugs and the allegation that they imported their own thugs. You mentioned that you will speak with the organizers. Who are the organizers of the protest? Can we know who they are?
Well, sincerely speaking, the organizers of the protest, just like we have been saying, are just hunger, poverty, maladministration, bad governance, insecurity, and all that. But there are prominent protesters, nationwide that we know, and since we act as their lawyer, we will try and talk to a majority of them and see if government shows commitment, sincere commitment. For instance, if government announced return of fuel subsidy today, then you can be rest assured that the possibility of the protest having a pause will be very, very likely. If government makes commitment that it's going to start cutting cost of governance, one of the demands of the protest is that politicians should stop being paid. It should be a part-time job. And truly, Nigeria does not even have the money to fund the expensive lifestyle of politicians. We cannot subsidize the poor, but we are able to subsidize all the governors, all the senators, all the House of Rep members, all the ministers, their aides, which are in thousands. The president, the vice president, the aides of the president, the aides of all the governors in the country.
Here's a challenge.
They waste too much.
Yeah, here's a challenge, that I've just noticed. Because you've mentioned once again that the certain organizers of the protest. I said hunger and unemployment, the individuals in particular. You said prominent individuals, organizers rather of the protest, prominent protesters, I beg your pardon. I've also noticed, in the last couple of days that the protest demands vary. There's a 10-point demand that that went viral, that was on Twitter. There's one that was posted by Omoyele Sowore that had 15 demands. There's some other ones that I've seen also on Twitter Spaces. What happens if it would be nice if we were able to identify some of these organizers. But what happens if the organizers say that their demands have been met, but the other demands that have been stated in the different notices that have been put out are not met, and then you can no longer control the crowd?
Very simple answer. You see, the whole idea and the essence of the protest is to get government to be responsible. That's why I said one of the greatest demands of the protest today is return of fuel subsidy, because it makes no sense where the governors are living large at the expense of the populace, while the people are suffering. It does not make sense that the president is giving the governors more money to loot, while the citizens and the economy suffer. If fuel subsidy is returned today, it has direct impact on the economy. Prices of goods and services will begin to reduce. If that is done, it shows goodwill, on the part of the government. the issues around politicians not being paid, that's another thing that the government can do that can get. And you see, the reason why government exists is because of the people, and the voice of the people is the voice of God. In fact, at the protest burning yesterday, the people were saying it, that they are the reason why government exists. I believe that once government shows that they are responsive to some of the demands of the protesters, that we're going to have a headway. After all, this protest is for the initial 10 days.
Okay, let's talk about the allegation of thugs, the reports that there were thugs that were imported with coastal buses. Can you expand on that?
Yes, your correspondent, Emmanuel Bagudu, was there. All the media houses in the country were there. They saw the arrival of the thugs in 6 coastal buses. So I'm very surprised why anybody will say, oh, the protesters just left Moshood Abiola Stadium, just like that. You understand? Okay, why did they agree to be in the Moshood Abiola Stadium if they were not taking positive steps to comply with the order? Everybody should have gone to the Eagle Square at the initial. But the protesters were determined to comply with the order of the court until some security agencies escorted the thugs in the buses to the venue. Why will you bring thugs to the venue of the stadium? Why? If the security agencies did not have ulterior motive of disrupting the protest.
All right. We'll talk more about that, but let's talk about Nyesom Wike and the role that he's played in all of this. We saw the address yesterday when he was, at the event with the chiefs and the transfer of staff of office, and he did address young Nigerians, saying that he applauded them for not being violent with the protest. But he mentioned specifically that he is aware of the fact that reports reaching him is that there is a senator who is sponsoring the protest, and there have been a lot of inferences. Do we have a clear picture who he might have been referring to and what element of truth or lack of it that there might be to that statement?
He is referring to his fighting partner, Senator Lekki Tollgate. He has been going around since yesterday saying that Senator Tollgate is the one that is sponsoring the protesters. The protesters don't give a damn about Nyesom Wike and Senator Lekki Tollgate. They should go and continue their fight in Wuse Market. We are not interested in their politicking. It's also very important to note that Nyesom Wike has run out of ideas. He had vowed the protest will not happen here. He thought Abuja was Ikwere local government. He doesn't know that this is northern Nigeria. Abuja does not tolerate people like Wike and their arrogance and their insult. He spent weeks now insulting Nigerians and the protesters. This same Wike, was he not protesting before? But at least we have seen that his arrogance since yesterday has reduced. Before he was insulting people and saying protests will not happen here. The protest has happened. So now what will Nyesom Wike do? What can he do? The protest has happened. Protest is here. So leaders should learn to respect the people. The abuse of this world that insult Nigerians, they should sincerely stop all these things that they are doing. They exist because of the people.
Yeah, all right. What happens going forward? This, might be day 2 of the protest. Do you expect that it would continue today in Abuja and, in other parts of the country? And how do you plan to also ensure that no more lives are lost? There's, no looting and vandalism of government property and, of course, private property as well. The IGP has reacted to that yesterday. But, what's the plan?
The ball is in the court of the security agencies. They should work with the protesters to have a hitch-free. They should desist from bringing out thugs because the thugs will just never go back home because they are hungry. The thugs they brought out yesterday, they were very lucky that they were not as unruly and violent as the ones that were brought out in other parts of the country. Allow the protesters to express themselves and go back home. People do not have the desire to sleep on the street yet. So they should not allow the protest to degenerate to the point where people will even say they are not going home. People will now say they want to be on the street permanently. It's just an end bad governance protest. I don't see why anybody will want that governance to continue. They should allow people to express themselves. The security agencies should stop using brute force against protesters, and they should also stop using thugs to quell protest.
Okay, but do you think that it continues today and forward?
Yes, of course. The protest continues today in Abuja and many parts of the country. Of course.
All right.
Protest continues today. People are already on their way out.
We're hoping
As
for
we
a
speak.
peaceful protest. We're hoping that we'll see zero incidences of violence from the law enforcement agents and the protesters, and that we can convey our message as clear as possible. Nigerians can convey the message as clear as possible without any life being lost or without the need for tear gas being shot into the air. Deji Adeyanju, thank you very much for joining us. I reckon you'll be going out to protest again today.
Yes, indeed.
All right.
All right. Just before we have you, we'll let you go. I also wanted to ask, I did mention it yesterday that the president still hasn't addressed Nigerians. Would you want Mr. President to address Nigerians? Will that bring any, difference to the mood of the protesters?
Yes, I had been wishing the president would address Nigerians yesterday night, after the protest, because I felt that, the president, should speak directly to the people. He should speak directly to the people. He should speak from the heart. He should make efforts to meet specific demands of the protesters. After all, he is the president of the Nigerian people, but his inability to address the nation, though quite sad and regrettable, will further ensure that protesters think that he does not care about them. He does not he does not take them serious. So I think the president should sincerely, he should address Nigerians today.
All right. We'll see how that turns out. Thank you very much, Deji Adeyanju, for speaking with us. We would, of course, follow up on how it turns out in Abuja and in every other part of the country, and we would love to speak with you again when necessary. Thanks for your time.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
All right. The conversations continue this morning. It's all mostly focused on the protests across Nigeria and bad governance protests that, of course, has started yesterday. Let's take a short break. When we come back, we have more guests joining us, more analysts joining us, and more of these conversations. The People's Democratic Party, PDP, has criticized the government for its high-handedness, accusing it of implementing anti-people policies that have made life in Nigeria unbearable. Now, this comes as Nigerians take to the streets to protest against economic hardship, inflation, and the government's policies, including the removal of petrol subsidies and unification of forex windows. At a press conference in Abuja, the PDP National Publicity Secretary, Honorable Debo Olugunagba, blamed the government's policies for the current economic hardship, poverty, and hunger affecting over 120 million Nigerians. The PDP demanded that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu takes immediate action to address the situation, including reviewing the government's policies, investigating alleged looting of subsidy and palliative funds, and channeling resources towards providing food and essential services, commodities to Nigerians. Now, joining us this morning is a former governorship candidate of the Action Democratic Congress, ADC, and arguably the newest member of the People's Democratic Party in Lagos State, and of course you're across the country, Funsho Doherty. Good morning, and thanks for joining us.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks
Good
for
to
having
have
me.
I'm not sure if to start with the PDP conversation or the protest conversation, but I think
Whichever.
we'll get to the PDP conversation
Okay,
later.
sure.
Let's start with the current burning issue across the country, and your just general reaction to it. There had been a build-up, so that the government had time, and a lot of people had time to react to it all the while. But we still saw how it played out yesterday.
Yes, and it was, I think, a bit predictable because these things tend to take this course. The question really that you ask is was there really an alternative? Because the people are coming from a place of deep conviction. People are in pain. It is widespread. It is nationwide. And you can understand the feelings that are driving these actions of the people. And of course, it's their constitutional right to protest. And that is something that we must actually protect because it's an essential part of democracy. And if we don't have that, we're in sort of an autocracy, which nobody wants. So having said that, leading up to the protest, it was clear that people were resolved and resolute that they were going to come out and make their voices heard. We also know that given historical antecedents, it is likely that you will have pockets of violence, that people who have their own intentions, nefarious aims, will come and try and participate. So that again was to be expected. So in a sense, I would say I'm not terribly surprised with the way things have turned out. I think the onus is on government to ensure, because one of the things that I have said is that since the last NSARS, one of the things I said was that it's only a matter of time before you have the next protest.
Yep.
All major cities see protests from time to time. So as a government, one of your key infrastructure assets are those assets that you have to manage these kinds of situations in a way that is not non-lethal, in a way that allows you to accommodate that constitutional right, but to do it in a way that is safe. So whether it's water cannons, whether it's protective equipment for your security personnel, you invest in these things ahead of time so that when these things occur, you are in a position to roll out those assets. So the onus, I think, is on government, not to kind of suppress that right, but to have ways of accommodating that right and managing it in a way that is consistent with the kind of democracy that we want to build.
Yeah.
All right. Now, once we see that there are several demands, different
Yes.
parties having different demands for these protests.
Yeah.
The one underlying demand that we can all agree with is the fact that people are hungry.
Yes.
And people are asking for better economy. Now, this hunger, we can say, is as a result of maybe some of the policies that have been made by the government of the day that has led us to where we are. We know you as a very strong voice. You've had a very strong voice of opposition. You called out recently, I think sometime last year, you did call out the misappropriation in the budget. And one of the arguments we oftentimes will hear that regardless of which party came into power, we would have inevitably ended where we are. People will have still had to deal with the same level of hunger. Is that a position that you agree with?
Well, I mean, a lot of the fruits that we are eating today were sown in the past. So to that extent, there's some element of truth there. Of course, that doesn't excuse a government in power because, coming into power, one of the things that you say is that you have the ability to manage the situation, and all of that. And so, it's not an excuse to come in and say that, and by the way, the government in power is the same party that was in power in the previous
Administration.
tenure.
Yeah.
So that argument only goes so far. More importantly, people are concerned with where they are today and how you manage where they are today. Are they worse off today than when the administration comes into power? So it's, I would say that, yes, there's some element of truth to say that, it's not all the doing of the present administration. Everybody would concede that. I would certainly concede that. But I also say that the management of it by the current administration has also left a lot to be desired. And in particular, the ability to manage the impact on the people and also manage the expectations and the emotions of the people, I think also leaves a lot to be desired. I think we have seen a government that is maybe a bit high-handed in the way they've approached and a bit distant from the people. And I think that this, and also I would add that part of what drives the reactions of people is the actions of the leaders themselves.
Yeah.
So if people are bearing unbearable burdens, but they see that the leaders are in the same boat with them and are sharing in their sacrifices and concerns, it's one thing. If, on the other hand, there's profligacy, there are visible excesses, unfathomable in some instances, and you keep tightening the screws on the people, it's only a matter of time before that kind of erupts.
Yeah.
And I think that is partly what we are seeing.
Yeah, but I did mention it this morning, that this, for me, looks like the report card for the current administration 14 months into government, into our post-inauguration. This basically is their result sheet of how they've managed the country and also managed the reaction to, their governance. What would you say the government, or how do you think that President Tinubu got it wrong? Mostly after fighting so hard for that position. Same thing with President Muhammadu Buhari, contested 3 times, eventually got to win it. And then, of course, we saw what those 8 years were like. So what do you think President Tinubu got wrong? Was it his appointments? Was he overwhelmed or underprepared, for the role? And, or is this a situation where there wasn't necessarily any plan to fix the country?
So I think there are elements of all of those things that you've mentioned. I think, first of all, running a country is a very complex thing. And, one should not assume that the prior experience that you have would immediately transfer. Running Nigeria is different from running Lagos State in the sense that it's a multicultural, multi-dimensional situation, and you have to manage various constituencies that are not homogeneous in a sense. That's one. Secondly, I think there was so much focus on winning the presidency, right, and the massive effort associated with that, and less focus, I think, on the nitty-gritty of what would be needed to manage what was already a difficult situation that everybody could see. And so if you look at the first few actions that were taken, whilst I think it was more about sending a signal of boldness and, and sort of flair, rather than sort of a thought through, calculated, well-researched and planned set of measures, taken together with mitigating, supporting measures, bearing in mind the impact that those things would have on the people. And if you don't do that in an integrated way, you end up with the kind of situation that we have. So you might make a dramatic statement that may get accolades, but when the effects come in, it can overwhelm those positive reports that you initially got. Now, I would also add, importantly, the question of appointments, which you mentioned, because again, managing a country like Nigeria is a complex dynamic, especially if you're in a situation where the economy is in a difficult place. You need the best hands. It was very clear to me, and I think to many people, that there were a lot of compromises in the cabinet that was put together. While there will always be some element of compromises, I think part of what we are seeing is the effectiveness of that cabinet in the reality of it. Because at the end of the day, it's one thing to announce appointments. It's another thing for those people to begin to work. And it's another thing to begin to see the results that it produces.
Is there any examples you can share with regards, round pegs and square holes?
I don't want to get into specifics, right? I don't want to get into specifics. But I think that at the end of the day, the government is the cabinet, and, and also the legislators, let's not forget.
All right.
But the appointive offices are the ones that the president has the direct responsibility for appointing. And this is the executive who does the work, right? One of the things that I also think is that you need a cabinet that has not just technical competence, right? But you need a cabinet that has that can serve as a counter, in some sense, a counterweight to the presidency, right? Because if you think about effective organizations are not organizations that have a strong leader and everyone else that sort of falls in line with the strong leader, right? Effective organizations are organizations that are essentially where the leader is a first amongst equals, right? Where people come around the table and the leader is doing something wrong, they have the stature, right, to say that, no, we actually don't think that that's the right way to go. This is what we think we should do. That's why, and you have a collaborative, that's why you have a council, an executive council. If I think of some of the decisions that I can think of one or two decisions that the Executive Council has taken, for example, where I think that has not been the case, right? And I think that with that, you have a government that is less than it should be. And I think that's the case.
Do you want to share maybe the examples you're thinking about?
So if you take a specific example, and I'll talk about this because I've written about it. So for example, if you take the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Road, which was a decision that was taken, the contract was awarded for trillions of naira without competitive bidding. And it went to Executive Council and was approved on that basis, in my opinion, contrary to the laws of the land, the procurement laws, the environmental impact assessment laws, and so on. Now, the council should be in a position to say, have we complied with this thing? If you have not complied with them, go back and comply with them. Right? That is why you have a council. That's why the framers of our laws and our frameworks said that such things should come and be approved by Executive Council, so that if there's an issue, Executive Council can raise it. You see what I mean? So you need that depth and bench of leadership who can stand up. And a lot of it is in the individuals that you choose, right? So you can choose to people your cabinet with people who will be forthright in their support of you as a leader and tell you when you're right and tell you when you're wrong. Or you can choose to people it with people who will basically endorse whatever you do.
Let's talk about the role that our lawmakers play in all of this. Some have accused them of not being able to implement legislative tools that would alleviate, the hardship that Nigerians are currently experiencing. But let's talk about so far how they have fared.
Yes.
Very recently, bearing in mind the statement by the Senate president where he had said, let them go and protest. We will be here eating. What was the first thing that came to you when you heard that? And how would you say the lawmakers have fared in general?
Look, I don't want to tar everybody with the same brush. So it's important to be fair to individual people. But I think as a whole, Nigerians are disappointed in their lawmakers. There's a sense that they are disconnected from the people. There's a sense that they are, they don't share the experiences of the people. If you look at the, even things like the way their compensation is set and so on, it is at odds with progressive democracies across the world, right? So to me, I think that the fundamental role of legislators, which is lawmaking and then representation of the people, right? In both of those areas, I would say they've fallen short of expectations. And I think that in particular, this present administration, I do not see as being an independent arm of government from the executive. Because part of the checks and balances that we have in our democratic system is that you have three co-equal arms of government. You have the executive, you have the legislature, and you have the judiciary. And they serve as a check and balance on one another. But if one is operating almost in a way that sends a message of being a rubber stamp, right, it's not positive for democracy. And I think that there is a strong sense, I have a strong sense that that's the case in this instance. So, am I terribly surprised by such a comment? No. I mean, I think out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So, to me, it's not...
Yeah. All right. We'll come back with, like a general analysis of, how the government has been run by the current administration. Let's just talk about the protests now.
Yeah.
The president, still hasn't addressed Nigerians. And I mentioned earlier that he had enough time.
Yeah.
If you were in his shoes, what would you advise that he does, or what would you do? And is it already even late? Would Nigerians even want to listen to anything that the president wants to say at this time?
So I think part of the issue that you have is that, people do not lay a lot of credibility in the words of government. And that's based on prior experience, right? You know, it's worsened by the fact that having announced the protests, all efforts seemed to be focused on telling people you can't protest or you mustn't protest or what have you, rather than spending a lot of time either taking particular actions that could alleviate, you know, the sense that people have that you know, government is not on their side. So as it is today, I think the best action that government can take really is just to manage the situation in a way that will not exacerbate the you know, what looks like a little fire that can be contained.
So some lives have been lost already.
If it were, yes, I mean, some lives have been lost. So I mean, but what I'm saying is that a lot depends on how you respond. Is what will determine the trajectory of the rest of the protest. You know, are there one or two big measures that government can come out and make that would make people sort of douse the tensions? As a practical matter, you know, are they going to go back on the subsidy? I'm not sure that they will. Forex, are you going to go in a different direction from saying that you've deregulated in a sense? Probably not at this stage. Where I see concrete actions can be taken quickly that are doable and that people can people will respond to is in the area of cost of governance. So if government comes out and makes a few big declarations around cost of governance that are substantive and they implement them and the people see them, I think that people will respond to that, right? Because it shows that you are taking those actions. Those actions are actions that impact you directly in a way that people can see, and it shows that you're putting yourself in the same boat with them.
So from day one of the protest and the response that we've seen, unfortunately, we've seen that 16 people have been killed. There have been violence, you know, erupting in different parts.
Yep.
How do you foresee that the rest of the, let's talk about day two. What do you think day two is going to look like?
Well, I don't have a crystal ball. So I guess we'll, in a way, we'll have to see how it plays out. One of the trends that has emerged is that, you know, it seems to have taken a broader dimension in the northern states, where, you know, you have a number of curfews being issued, you have conflagrations and so on and so forth. So it will be interesting to see if that trend remains or if it transfers to other states and so on. I really don't have an answer. I think we'll have to wait. I think today will actually be, so the first day is the first day, right? So we'll see, we've seen that play out. I think the second day, the third day will give us a sense of what the staying power is, how people are, you know, is it building momentum, or is it, you know, staying constant, or is it beginning to dissipate? Now, ultimately, if well managed, in a way that does not fan the flames, right? If the security agencies are moderate in their response and so on, and government can announce one or two measures, particularly again in this cost of governance area, with time, people may feel that the point is made, and people don't like fighting long wars anyway. So you will find that after a while, it's escalating or it dissipates. And yes, if you manage it.
Yeah, we will see. I mean, it's up to them to decide, you know, how they would handle it.
Yes.
The country belongs to all of us, but we'll see. But I want us to then, maybe we'll have time to come back to this. But let's talk about, you know, your recent, you know, announcement, moving from the ADC to the PDP. Just quickly, you know, what prompted, you know, that decision, you know, and why the PDP?
As you know, I contested for the governorship on the platform of the African Democratic Congress, ADC, in the last election. And one of the things that we have said is that it is important for opposition to be, it's important for you to have significant opposition, right? And if you look at the kind of system that we operate in Nigeria, the democratic system we operate in Nigeria, we operate what we call a first past the post system, democratic system. What that means is that in an election, we don't have proportional representation. And what that means is that in an election, the candidate who has the most votes wins, regardless of whether he has, 35% or 40%, right? You don't need a majority to win. And in those systems across the world, what you will find is that over time, they tend to move in the direction of a two-party structure. And the reason for that is because you have an incumbent and you generally need an opposition that is of significant size to challenge the incumbency. And then you have the play of those, the interplay of those. So you have the Democrats versus Republicans in America, you have the Labour and Conservative movement in the UK and so on, right? And where you have a splintered opposition, in the kind of democracy that in which we operate, it just keeps the incumbent strong and in place. All right, so that's a foundation. Now, in saying that, I believe, when you bring it down to Lagos in particular, that Lagos has been under-governed since 1999. We spent a generation. Lagos is still lacking many of the fundamentals. So there's public water supply, for example, which is the basic thing that you would expect in a modern city, is an issue. Yeah. Regular, stable and regular, available, affordable power supply, which you might partly argue is a national issue, but for a city of Lagos's stature commercially, after 30 years under one administration, should not be the case. Quality of education, quality of healthcare, and so on. Even basic public law and order is an issue. So many of these issues still exist. So in looking at this, we've said that it's important to have an opposition that can challenge the incumbent. And when you look at the PDP, with its national scale, with its institutional structure, I believe that it provides the best platform from which to challenge the incumbents.
And are you talking about challenging the incumbency as, a supporting act from the sidelines, or do you plan to still be on the, as a front runner?
I have no plans to take a back seat.
Okay. And why not Labour? Why not Labour Party, seeing what they achieved in 2023?
So I think you have to look at the dynamics and the political dynamics within Lagos State in the first place. And then secondly, you have to then look at the institutional structures of the parties themselves. So the institutional structure and staying power and national spread of the Labour Party, I think is questionable, right? I think we saw a flash in one election. Whether that is a sustainable flash or not is another question, right? It was really built around a particular candidate, even though people coalesced around it. So I think there's some fragility associated with that platform, which must be recognized. I also think in the context of Lagos State, that fragility is even further reinforced.
Yeah.
Mr. Doherty, thank you for your time with us this morning. We hope you have a safe drive home.
Thank you.
We do hope that we have better conversations to have in the nearest future regarding not just Lagos State, but also the country at large. Thank you for your time with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Right.
Thank you.
We'll go on a quick break, and when we come back, we have more guests who will be joining us. We're still exploring conversations regarding the protest and the state of the nation. Stay with us.
Welcome once again. Nigeria's youth led protests against bad governance, and that, of course, kicked off yesterday as it enters their second day today, with demonstrators facing off against security forces in cities across the country on day one yesterday. The police and military's role in maintaining law and order has come under scrutiny as reports emerge of excessive force used against protesters. News Central reports that in Abuja, Jos, and Borno state security forces fired tear gas sporadically at protesters, leaving many injured. At least 2 journalists were physically assaulted by police while covering the protest. In Kano State, protesters vandalized a Nigerian Communications Commission digital center, prompting Governor Abba Kabir Yusuf to impose a 24-hour curfew. Similar curfews have been imposed in Yobe and Borno State. Civil society organizations have condemned the police action, while police remain on high alert, with all units mobilized to respond to the situation. The protesters remain resolute, insisting on their demands for good governance and an end to economic hardship. The situation, of course, remains volatile, with fears of further escalation. Joining us is security expert and former director of the DSS, Dennis Amakri. Good morning. Thanks for joining us, Mr. Amakri.
Good morning.
All right. But before we get the conversation on with Mr. Amakri, let's speak with our correspondent who's in the FCT this morning, Amading Uyi. Good morning, Amading Uyi.
Good morning, Nasarawa.
Great to have you. You seem very relaxed. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of tension in the FCT this morning. Can you share with us, what the current situation is like?
Okay, first of all, I'll have to establish where I am. This is the Kubo mechanic, just at a checkpoint, at a military checkpoint. If you look behind me, you see there's a checkpoint ongoing. The military have deployed personnel on ground, and then also, if you just follow me, you just look behind me here, you still see more personnel behind me. What we've observed here is that it's a defense deployment, because we have sighted officers from the Nigerian Army, the Nigerian Air Force, and the Nigerian Navy. But at that point, I'll also take you back. Just at that point behind me is the area called the Maraba area, which is a border community between the FCT and Abuja. But at this position where I am was where the skirmish was observed yesterday, and the military and the police had to resort to the use of tear gas to disperse the protesters. Now, on our way getting here this morning, we also observed similar deployments. Somewhere at the Nyanya Bridge, we saw military vehicles. So it's fair to say that there is a heavy deployment of security operatives. But I'll get you to what happened yesterday. At the Maraba area, it went beyond protests, because when our correspondents got there yesterday, just like what happened in Kano, we observed that miscreants under the guise of protest were breaking shops, taking valuables belonging to shop owners, even passengers on the road. Their phones were being collected. So yesterday, the military and the police had to deploy a large detachment of personnel to be able to end the violence.
If I may interrupt,
for the group that tried to...
If I may interrupt you there, you're saying, if I hear you clearly, you're saying yesterday that there were phones being collected. Who was doing the collecting? Just to clarify.
Now, some miscreants under the guise who felt that they came under the guise of protesters. Around the Nyanya axis, they were breaking shops, carrying valuables belonging to shop owners, and then they were also attacking passers-by, because our crew met several people who had their phones collected with them using machetes and the rest. So as of yesterday, beyond this area, it was not just protest, it was miscreants taking advantage of the situation to unleash mayhem on passers-by and shop owners.
All right. There's, of course, a little issue between the court order that was given, that protesters should use the National Stadium, and, of course, the protesters, not very likely to, follow that court order. What are your expectations for today? And how do you think things would turn out, with the protest today? If it continues today, do you expect that the National Stadium will be used? And if not, what do you think it plays out like?
Now, for me, it's going to be a very difficult situation, because yesterday evening, come night, when the FCT Minister was briefing, who was insisting that there is a valid court order restraining protesters to stay within the confines of the Moshood Abiola Stadium. He also raised an alarm of protesters trying to gain their way into the Eagle Square, just close to the 3-arm zone. So we are going to see a situation where security operatives will insist that they have justifiable right to implement the court order and enforce it to ensure that protesters do not go on the street. Now, Osauge, I'll tell you, I understand the fears, because also at another part of town yesterday, what I also witnessed just around the Kubwa area, where I saw a large mass of people protesting, singing that they will not agree. Osauge, what I observed was that they had blocked one part of the major highway, including the service lane, and were extorting vehicle owners. So as your vehicle came, you had to give them a certain amount of money before they pass. These are the worries of security agencies, saying that the protesters are infringing on the rights of other road users and other Nigerians that do not want to join the protest. So what I see playing out is that the security agencies, they are also going to deploy today to ensure that the protesters are not given free rein to protest on the streets of the capital.
All right. Ahmadine, do stay safe. We'll look forward to getting more updates from you regarding what's happening in the FCT. But thank you so much for joining us. We'll touch back with you. But now let's get back to our guest who's waiting with us. We have Dennis Amakri, who is a security expert. And I think the first question, I'm sure you were following Ahmadine's report, to share with us your thoughts on that report and also your general thoughts regarding the first day of the protest.
Thank you very much for having me. You see, we have a different scenario when we compare it to the EndSARS or other protests that have happened in Nigeria. But the unique of this particular protest is the one that I look from the prism of security, that the police have done very well. But at the same time, they've done very badly when it comes to deployment of their people. The police is supposed to escort, or should I say guide, the protesters. But what we see here is them congregating in a particular place and saying that don't go this way or don't go this way. Be in the stadium, don't be in the stadium. And, later, tear gases start flying around. I don't think that's the best method to do it. They would have taken charge, allowed the initiative to remain with them, by leading the procession or whatever to wherever they want to go. But even your reporter is saying that there were a group of people that were extorting money from people. If the police was leading the procession, they would have been there with them. Yeah. But as long as they are not there with them, they are concentrating on a particular area, either Eagle Square or at the stadium, then other groups, you see at what happened in Kano. People were waiting for this to happen so that they can go ahead and, loot or steal or whatever they want to do. So I think there are lessons to be learned. And I think the police are going to adjust their operational order.
Yeah, but Mr. Macri, we've been waiting for them to adjust this operational order for decades. This is no different from any other protest that we've seen in Nigeria. The only thing that varies is the casualty figures. But we've had the same conversations multiple times. I remember I spoke with you during the EndSARS protest multiple times, and it's pretty much the same approach that they have. So would you say that it is mostly because of the inefficiency of the police that always makes them resort to firing tear gas? Because they're either poorly trained or they don't have the resources to actually manage a protesting crowd? And so they eventually just resort to firing tear gas and maybe even live ammunition. Or is it just complete disregard, for protesters?
Yes, well, I would say that things have changed because I didn't hear much about live bullets being used yesterday. Although somebody said that some people died. Did they die from choking from the tear gas, or they were actually shot with live bullets? These are areas that we will find out later. But you see, the police itself have to update their crowd control mechanism or their crowd control system. In fact, before we get to tear gas, that means we've gone to a level where there is almost a riot going to happen. Then you throw tear gas to make sure that, people disperse. Water cannons can be used. Other kinds of crowd control tools can be used. And please, I think majorly is this system where the police is still having this idea about them and us. There should be no them and us here. These are Nigerians, and these are people that you are, the Constitution has said that take care of them, and then you should take care of them. There are no us and them.
Just for clarity's sake, and this is, what the newspapers across the country are reporting, is between 14 to 17 people that, have been declared, dead from the protest yesterday. Okay. And all these reports, say, just like on the Punch, one person was shot dead in Abuja and Kano, 2 killed in Jigawa, 6 others reportedly gunned down by security forces in Niger, while 4 died in Borno and 3 in Kaduna. But so there's almost no, doubting, and of course, maybe investigations still need to be carried out, that these people were shot by security agencies and security forces, which made me, of course, put the question that, or frame the question that way, in the start.
Yeah, thank you very much for that statistics. I'm really surprised. In fact, I might not be surprised if it actually happened, because our police have not learned to not use live bullets. They're always resorting to live bullets, and there is no need for that. The Inspector General was very clear, about controlling the protesters and all the rest. And why give them live bullets? It is what they were issued that they are using. Rubber bullets are there for crowd control. Why not use rubber bullets? Why not use water cannons? Why not use, even tear gas as a last resort? Because what you are doing is crowd control. It is not a war. Let's go and deal with them or decimate them. You want to control them. It's just like cattle, watch farmers. If they have a whole bunch of cattle, one small 14-year-old boy with just a stick, knows how to control them and lead them to where he wants them to go. And that's the mechanism, that's a system that we should learn to do, instead of using live bullets on Nigerians.
All right, we can see videos that are showing on the screen. This is live footage of the protest happening in different parts of the country. This is currently in Lagos. Maybe we can give it a bit of audio volume to hear what is being said in Lagos, Nigeria.
There is no money to build refinery.
Okay, we seem to be struggling with the audio. Okay.
Yeah.
But I can see there that there's conversation about the minimum wage.
This same amount will build more than 15 refineries in Nigeria.
All right. The placard being carried there says something in the line of place public office holders on minimum wage. And we've seen that's been replicated in a number of other protesters who have carried the placard. We'll come back to talk more about the possibility of that, and more importantly, this conversation is focused on the role of the police in protecting the protesters, including the anti-protesters. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to Breakfast Central. We're still looking at the protest and the results and the expressions it's taken in different parts of the state and the country. And we're joined by security expert Dennis Amakri. Thank you very much for staying with us, Mr. Amakri. Let's talk about the role that the security agencies have in protecting the lives of the protesters as well as the anti-protesters. A particular section they had quoted provided that where citizens had communicated the place or the address of protest, that the responsibility lies on the police to ensure that that is being, guaranteed, that their security and safety is being guaranteed. But what the police in some measure have interpreted this to be is that they insist that protesters must share their details. Protesters must share the name of the protest organizers, the venue that they intend to use for protests. In fact, as you must have seen in Abuja, they have gone ahead to get an ex parte injunction ensuring that protesters would be limited to the National Stadium in Abuja. So talk about this requirement, and what you think that section means, and then the responsibility that lies on the police, whether or not these people have indicated this, have followed through with these guidelines.
Okay, thank you very much for that. First of all, people are free to, protest. In fact, this particular protest has been made very popular by government because, when the rumors start coming around about a protest coming up between 1st and 10th of August, the government was very busy. There was an engagement with local traditional rulers, with ministers and all the rest, But even the engagement, that is good. When you want to counter protests, is good. But I don't think it seeped right down because the governors, only APC governors were addressed. And then, of course, the PDP or other state party governors were not invited to Abuja. I think they should have invited everybody because this is a national problem and they would have addressed it. And then when these guys go back, they should also have called all the local government chairmen in their state, talk to them, sit down the whole thing. Now, I don't know the objective of government. Is it to stop the protest or to make the people aware of, what they are doing? Because, you see, there are two things about this protest. The negative side is where you have people coming out and then, of course, turning the protest into riots. But again, protests can be very positive. Even government can gain from protests because that's the way they can get positive feedback on what they are doing. It's government of the people, by the people, for the people. So the people, this is one area that the people can come out and tell you that, hey, what you're doing is wrong and this is what we want you to do, and then of course government will adjust accordingly. Yep. So it's not that protests are bad. And that's why I also blame, government in a situation where you have to now get together, no protesters, this is the first time we're getting that, no protesters, organized with T-shirts and all the rest and placards and everything. It makes nonsense of the whole idea. See, it even emphasized that them and us attitude, it's one country, one people, and we should be dealing it with that way.
Mr. Makri, just now you mentioned this, I just thought to ask, has this ever been, you're a former assistant director at the DSS, so I believe you should know, has this ever been a tactic of de-escalating or quelling a protest, which is the setting up of counter-protest, the no protest protest, the counter-protest we've seen in the past? Has this ever been a tactic of either the DSS or the NSA in the past?
It has never been a tactics of the NSA or the DSS or even the police. If you see any counter protest, I've been in the service, I stayed there and retired, and what I have discovered is that politicians, when the protests get to a particular level, politicians will inject, certain people into the protests and scatter the whole thing. I think that's the objective. Scatter everything. Then police will come and disperse everybody go home. But we're in a democracy now. The military can do that very, very well. But we're in a democracy now whereby we should also look at fundamental human rights, we look at equal justice, freedom of speech, and all those kind of stuff. And to execute those kind of things, then you really need to engage. You need to talk to people, and then, of course, considering their rights too. The military, of course, I'm happy that this time they were not very active, because during military regimes, they come very active, and they are the ones that, in fact, protesters are very scared of,
Right.
But this time, they pull back and watch,
Yeah.
So
All
these
right,
are the
kindly
different
hold on.
levels.
Yeah, I'll pick up from this same point that you've just made in a bit, but I want us to speak with our correspondent who's here in Lagos, Bernard Akede, who's at Lekki Tollgate, I believe. Bernard, can you hear us? Bernard, good morning. Can you hear us?
Good morning.
All right, great. Confirm where you are and what the situation is over there.
I can hear you clearly. Good morning. All right. I'm currently in Ojota, which pretty much is the epicenter of this, nationwide protest that commenced yesterday. And what you're looking at now, if you have clear visuals, is the second, would I say, a leader of the protest, or the second speaker for the protesters this morning. Now, one of the speakers of the protest this morning, Comrade Akinkum is what he calls himself, and that's him there in the green shirt, still conversing with the police. Now, they were trying to have an agreement with the police here this morning as to how the protest will take place, in ways that it will not disrupt activities of passengers or of Nigerians, basically. Now, remember that it is not a public holiday. Remember that there is no curfew. Remember that there's no restriction of movement. So people are still expected to go about their daily duties. However, if the protest gets wider than this, it will be a challenge for people to move. So I guess the police is trying to see how they can ensure that this particular road on Ojota, which usually will be a very busy road on a Friday, on a working day, to ensure that the road is clear. Now, one of the agreements they reached was that all protesters will be on the curb here and not on the road, so that they'll be able to move freely. We, members of the press, are trying to see how we can reach an agreement with the police to allow us to take part of the road, so at least we can get shots of the people on the curb to the left and on the curb to the right. Now, to my right here, you can see the curb has been completely taken over by security operatives. More than what here yesterday, I believe. All the way from the left, and you'll see it very soon. We'll try and pan all through. Right all the way from there down, all onto the other side. In numbers that I can't exactly count. It's a combination of the Civil Defense Corps, Federal Road Safety, Lagos Traffic Management Authority, that's LASMA, and of course, riot police, all adorned in riot gear.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And that's how it's been all morning, this morning. But it still hasn't deterred the protesters from chanting songs of victory and songs of protest and songs of solidarity all through this morning since when we got here.
All right.
We don't know how today is going to be, but it's clear that the police is doing all they can to ensure that today doesn't get as rowdy as yesterday.
All right, Bernard, we'll come back to you. We're having a bit of issue with your picture, so we hope that by the time we touch base with you again, we'll have a much clearer picture. But let's quickly head over to Delta State. We have our correspondent in Delta State, Austin Azu. Good morning, Austin. Where in Delta State are you and what is the situation like?
Austin, can you hear us?
Currently, we are at Interbar roundabout, one of their takeoff points. Yes, I can hear you. One of the takeoff points here in Asaba. Beside me, you can see the trucks of security personnel. Behind, you can see the trucks of the Nigerian soldiers. You can see the presence of the police. And of course, you can equally see the presence of the Nigerian Security and Civil Defense and the DSS as well. At my left-hand side, you can see a low protester standing by, probably waiting for some of their colleagues to come together so that they can begin the takeoff from this particular spot here at Interbar. But however, what is so special about today is that it seems like business have started opening already, because most of the vehicular movement we are seeing did not take place yesterday. Yesterday, it was very kind of low-key. However, we expected that from now till 12 noon, more of these protesters may likely come out to begin the day 2 procession. But however, if they don't come out, it seems the day 2 of the protest is likely going to be like a low-key, unlike what we have yesterday.
All right. We would have you there to continue to monitor things as they
Progress.
see how things progress this morning. And if things change, we'd love to have you share with us. Thanks very much, Austin, for joining us and for your time this morning. All right. Let's go back to the former Assistant Director of the DSS, Dennis Amakri. Mr. Amakri, before we have you, before we let you go, you mentioned something just now, which is that in previous protests, we see that politicians bring or facilitate the emergence of either counter-protests or thugs to scuttle those protests. I'm sure you remember saying that.
Definitely.
So I want to know, I mean, so you must know this, because, of course, that's what the DSS does. It's intelligence gathering. And so can you confirm that the DSS is aware of whoever it is that may have facilitated the emergence of thugs into the NSAS protest in 2020?
The DSS is not all-knowing or all-present, or, we don't sit down in a war room, to say, okay, do this, or this is going to happen. That's not how it works, okay? Like I told you, the DSS itself is an intelligence agency. They go out and collect information, and then, of course, that information is processed to produce what we call intelligence, and that intelligence is fed back to politicians like the president or head of state, or governors or military administrator, or whoever is needing that particular intelligence. And now, that is where their job stops. They can decide to use it or not use it, for many reasons. We can tell them, oh, see, there is something going on. And then, of course, the president or the president's relation is involved.
Yeah.
He can decide not to even
do
anything.
But what is clear is that they are aware that some of these thugs that invade the protest and eventually scuttle the protest or create violence are brought in by politicians. That one is a clear fact.
They are not aware until it happens. For instance, I can tell you during NSAS, we found out that there were some people that were entering into a bus around the Alausa area, who were entering into the bus, who are not part of the real protesters, and they were carrying all kinds of, batons and machetes and stuff like that. And then, of course, they got into the vehicle, which was a Lagos State government vehicle, and that vehicle took them somewhere else. Now, at the end of the day, investigations will usually come up, and the DSS will investigate. And when they investigate, they discovered, who these people are, or who sent them, or where they're coming from. So it is not that they are aware and they allowed it to happen, or, they suggested it, no, I don't think that is their role in society.
All right, Mr. Amakri, thank you for your time with us this morning. We look forward to having you again. As we head out of this conversation, we still will proceed with further conversations about the protest.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. We have our correspondent, Niyi Omoniyi, somewhere in Lagos. Let's find out exactly where he is and what the situation is like where he is. Good morning, Niyi Omoniyi. Please, where are you and what is the situation like?
Good morning, Olive. All right, so we're at the Lekki Tollgate. It's day 2, and we understand that this is not one of the designated area where that was approved for protesters to gather. But it doesn't mean that protesters haven't seized the opportunity, especially yesterday, to gather here. About 30 of them, a handful, gathered here yesterday. But let's talk about today. It was a slow start yesterday, so I'm guessing it's going to be a slow start also today. But we can see police officers are just arriving as against what we had yesterday, where we met them here already mounted in their numbers. But today we have quite a slight number of police officers on ground, and we can see some of them are just trickling in one after the other. And speaking about protesters, we don't know how many will be coming today. We can't preempt that, but we do know that some protesters will gather here. The road is actually very, very free. Vehicular movements ongoing as usual, and there are no unusual activity currently ongoing here. And it's understandable because Lekki Tollgate is not one of the areas where protesters are supposed to gather. But we're hoping that within an hour, 2-3 hours, we'll have more events to actually share with you as to our protesters here, what is happening. Yesterday, about 3 protesters were arrested. They had to even disperse them with a tear gas. Maybe that won't happen today. We do not know. But of course, I'll be here to keep you updated as events unfold.
Yeah.
All right.
Have you gotten to speak with any of the policemen? Is there any difference between their plan of action from yesterday and what it will be today? Because I did see tear gas being fired yesterday at the Lekki Tollgate, which I thought was completely unnecessary. I didn't think that there was any, violence that required the use of tear gas. So have you gotten to speak with any of them or heard anything about their approach for today?
Okay, so as you can see behind me, these last 2 pickup vehicles just came in, and I have not been able to approach them. Hopefully, I'll be able to approach them afterwards. But what we do get in this kind of situations is that the police won't speak to the press. They will ask you to speak with the necessary authorities within the police force to get any information you want to get. But one thing they actually harped on yesterday was that this is not designated area for protests. So protesters are not allowed to gather here, hence their move to actually disperse the protesters yesterday with a tear gas. And today we might actually see something like that as well, but noting that this is not one of the designated areas for protesters to actually stay. We're hoping to get a more professional police system in place. We're hoping to get them behave more professionally as it was yesterday, and just see how things unfold. But I can't tell you right now if they're going to fire tear gas at protesters or not, because we are still waiting for the protesters to come in. And of course, we know that some of the agitations and the behavior of the protesters will actually determine sometimes how these things pan out.
All right. Ani, do stay safe. We'll look forward to touching base with you again to see what the situation is like at the Lekki Tollgate. And hopefully there will not be need for us to see any firing of tear gas anytime soon. All right. It's been an interesting morning so far. Several conversations have been had. We've had Dennis Amakri. We've also had Funsho Doherty, and we've also had Deji Adeyanju join us as well. And I think majority of our guests have shared similar sentiments in terms of understanding that there's an underlying disgruntled feeling that Nigerians are expressing and experiencing And as a result, they are protesting. It's not the desire of any Nigerian to wake up one day, head to the streets and protest. But of course, because the cost of living and the quality of life they're living is subpar.
Yeah.
I think one thing that I found very interesting in this case, for example, is how the security agencies have reacted to this, especially with regards to limiting the areas that people can't protest. Adeyanju highlighted this in our conversation with him, stating that there had been already a decided case stating that you cannot restrict protesters. So long as the protest is peaceful, you cannot restrict protesters to a certain location. But we've seen that play out, and we're seeing it continue to play out.
Yeah.
As these protesters have mounted at Lekki Tollgate, stating, of course, based off what happened on the 20th of October, that this is not a designated protest area.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously issues with that, and I think we've had a bit of back and forth with, the whole idea of even seeking permission from the police, for protesting, court orders detailing where you can protest. These are things that normally are unheard of.
Stating where you are to protest. And funny thing is, even that Section 83 that they're quoting, it doesn't say citizens are mandated to. It
No,
says
not at all.
where citizens share their protest location or protest address, that the police is then bound to ensure that they guarantee them protection.
That's exactly what I'm, referring to. That we've obviously had a lot of issues with the way those things have been done so far, and we'll continue to analyze and seek clarity as to whether we need to seek or protesters need to seek permission. If it makes any sense for you to seek details from the people you want to protest against, on how you should protest. I mean, it's just not making a lot of sense. So there's that, and of course, then Zamakri mentioned something which I think has been typical with the Nigerian government and Nigerian police response to protesters. The whole me or us versus them approach that Nigerian police always has. And I'm not sure where it comes from. When citizens have decided to protest against the government, why does the Nigerian police always have that mentality that it is a battle between good and evil, or it's a battle between, us and them? And it's a thing that needs to change with the mentality with which the Nigerian police are trained. So there's that part as well. And then also, once again, a reminder that the Nigerian government still hasn't actually addressed the protesters. And I'm not talking about Nyesom Wike, who has not been appointed or voted rather by anybody, was appointed by President Tinubu. It is by the president himself, or at least the vice president. Somebody needs to be able to speak to Nigerians and say, we hear your cries, we hear your grievances.
As opposed to hearing from the mouthpiece of people saying, "No, the president is ready to dialogue with protesters," as the president said.
He hasn't. And so, these things are important, and they would also determine how much, more of the protesting that we will see. Are we going to continue the whole of day 2? Is Northern Nigeria going to continue to be in the chaos that it experienced yesterday in Kano State in particular? Will Mr. President decide that, okay, it's time for me to address Nigerian citizens now and calm the fears of Nigerian people? And also, even if he has to address the people, and it's one of the things that I hope that we're going to be able to get Funsho Doherty to speak on. If President Tinubu has to address the Nigerian people, what are the things that can possibly be offered as a peace offering to these protesters now to say that, okay, we hear your cries, and these are things that we're going to take immediate steps on to ensure that, we end the protest. So we're going to have more people join us today on the program. And of course, they will be able to detail further, and maybe answer that question. What little things or maybe major steps can President Tinubu offer to the Nigerian people, and, would maybe get the protesters to stay back at home and not continue with the whole 10 days? And how maybe does it show a lot of disregard for the Nigerian people if the president or the vice president or anybody on that level still hasn't found it necessarily or worthy enough to speak with the Nigerian people? So far, we've had Deji Adeyanju, who joined us from Abuja. We've had Funsho Doherty, who just left the ADC, the African Democratic Congress, to the PDP. And then we also had Dennis Amakri, the former assistant director of the DSS, to x-ray some of these conversations. We've also had our correspondents in different parts of Nigeria share with us, what the live situation is like over there. Stay with us. We'll take a short break, and when we come back, we, of course, continue these discussions as we focus on day 2 of the End Bad Governance protest here in Nigeria. Stay with us.
It's day 2 of the End Bad Governance protest. The Nigerians have taken to the streets to register their complaint, their displeasure for how this administration has brought the country to its knees, many of them say. With several demands, some 10, some 5, some 15, the underlying agreement is that the nation is not in a good place. People are struggling to feed, to make ends meet, and Nigerians certainly want an end to bad governance. Day 1 has registered some measure of violence and protests in different parts of the country, people who had been shot and killed, unfortunately. There have been arguments by the protesters who are against these protests and those who feel that the government has maybe done well, but their number, it would seem, pales in comparison to those whose voices are louder, the ones who speak against how things have been run in Nigeria. Not only is the protest happening in different parts of the country, the protest is also happening on social media where it all began. And the conversation is centered around the hashtag #EndBadGovernance. So let's head to X and share what some of the tweets are saying, revealing Nigerians' thoughts on this. Akintunde Babatunde says, in solidarity with End Bad Governance protesters, you cannot beat a child and expect him not to cry. Away from Akintunde Babatunde, there are more tweets. Antiada says, hunger doesn't know tribe. Hunger doesn't know gender. Hunger doesn't know party. Hunger doesn't know religion. Hunger doesn't know status. Hunger no send your papa. The country is starving. It's enough. And the next tweet we have is from Ayo Shogunro. He says, Tinubu and his family are not invested in Nigeria as a society. This protest means nothing to them except as an interruption in the flow of money. Right now, I bet he's confident that Nigerians will tire and go home and business as usual will resume. I'll come back to a reaction to this, especially looking at the fact that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the last time that, as at the time we are collating the tweets, the last time we saw a tweet from his page was on the 26th of July 2024 at 8:19 p.m. And he said, wishing Team Nigeria a phenomenal outing at the Paris 2024 Olympics commence in France. May God bless Nigeria. This further reiterates the conversation that a number of Nigerians have been asking, where is our president? And why has the president not yet addressed the people? The country seems to be burning down. People in different parts of the country protesting against hunger. People have been shot. People have been killed. The heartbreaking part of this is to see our fathers and our mothers going into the streets with their empty pots to symbolize the struggle that they're going through. Parents having to strip naked to be able to pass across the message. Yet, all we hear is silence. Again, where is President Bola Ahmed Tinubu? And why has he not spoken to Nigerians? And at this point, many wonder if he says anything, what impact it will have on the protest and where Nigerians are in this current time. But let's go ahead with the tweets and see, some of the further conversations that have been had on X. Let's take a few more tweets. Now, Celebrity Taylor says, tomorrow, all Niger Delta youths dressed in black will take the protest to Asari Dokubo's house. Impunity must end in Nigeria. This tweet was made in reference to his statement where he warned protesters that nobody should bring the protest to the Niger Delta. Unfortunately, it would seem that the Niger Deltans are not heeding that call, and we hope to be able to bring more updates in that regard much later. The next tweet we are taking this morning is another tweet. I believe we have more, yes. This one says, my insulin and other diabetic gadgets, meds were very affordable and accessible. Now it's either overpriced or unavailable or available but expired. I thank God that I'm able to find a way around all this. But what about those that cannot afford it? Hashtag end bad governance now. There's still a few more tweets. Kano says, I got a call from a US journalist. They wanted to get my views on the protest tomorrow. They also said that they have a lot of citizen journalists on the ground who will feed them news tomorrow. Advice to the Nigerian government, do not use force on the protesters. You should not even have that as an option. You know how your police work. One corporal shoots a protester, it's on the international news. That bad press will kill your ability to sell any dollar bonds or attract investors. Be careful. Well, I guess that's a little too late now, as protesters have unfortunately been killed. We also have seen some celebrities and entertainers lend their voice. Here we have winner of Big Brother Naija and singer Lekki. He says, the government's actions or inactions is a direct protest against our well-being, our survival, and our livelihood. Things are hard, people are hungry, people are barely making ends meet. This is why we are also protesting. Hashtag end bad governance in Nigeria. The next tweet is from Renu Omokri. He says, I certainly hope Peter Obi is happy now that the war he wanted is playing out on the streets of some states. Is this meant to be a protest? These businesses being looted are owned by law-abiding Nigerians who have no say in government and are trying to get by, even as they employ the few they can. After looting and destroying property, what will be achieved? These are some of the conversations that we're having and seeing on social media. Maria Ndura says, the rate at which children are diagnosed with malnutrition at Children's Emergency is alarming. Even the adults are not left out. Well, these are really sad times. Okay, I cannot end without taking this one. This is final tweet from Uzo Arukwe, an actor. And he says, now who don't chop belle food, they get time to watch film. We Nigerians are very hardworking and industrious people. All we ask for is a government that cares about its own citizens enough to implement policies that improves the standard of our living. Hashtag end bad governance in Nigeria. As you can see, there's a great level of displeasure. Nigerians are not happy. Yes, the propaganda and the controversy theorists will spring up, and people will share their different thoughts regarding the protest on who may be sponsoring, who may not be sponsoring. But the one thing we cannot deny is the fact that Nigerians are hungry. The country is bleeding, and we certainly need something done now, and we certainly do need our president to speak. But I'd like to end this on a very sweet note, on the sweet note of the light that can be found at the end of the tunnel. In the midst of all this darkness, there has been some hope regarding the end bad governance protest. Yesterday, while several videos were making the rounds on social media, one particular video of a man, Benjamin Chijoke, who is the father of a 13-year-old boy he refers to as a programmer who can code, talked about how very difficult it is, how he'd walked from first step to the protest ground, how his son is really talented but is unable to ensure that he can buy data for the son to learn more about programming or even pay for his son's tuition fees. Unfortunately, he said, even though he has come to the realization that his own future, he probably doesn't have a future in the country, but he's out there fighting for the future of his son. And this was a video that was circulated, a video done by Channels TV. It's important to recognize that in the midst of all this darkness, we all found a way to be united, as Maurice Money on social media took up this course and shared his account details, found out the details, and after proper investigation, it is interesting to note that he found out that the man's son needed 1.8 million naira to be able to do the course on programming, and as at our last count, we found out that they've raised the sum of 2 million naira. So even in the midst of the chaos and the madness, we are fundamentally good people at heart. And where we are able to come together, there's so much more that we can do. So well done, and thank you to Maurice Moye and to everyone who retweeted and are helping this man and his son to achieve their dream. And that's the sweet spot we would like to leave it on. There's more conversations on what Nigerians are saying, and as we progress with the show, we'll head back to X. Remember that you can also continue the conversations with us here at News Central TV on all social media platforms. We'll be right back after this break.
This thing, okay, when you finish, just let me know. I'll come and show you.
What did she buy?
Sunset.
Did she buy Coke or anything? Yeah. Good morning, Miss Awosanya.
Yes, sir. Good morning, sir. Can you hear me?
Okay, yes, now we can. Morning. Thank you for joining us.
How far?
Thank you very much.
Good morning, darling. No, I've not yet gone to check. I'll go and check now. You bought for me and for The August 1st nationwide protest was intended to bring attention to economic hardship and government policies. The rallies, which began peacefully, escalated into violent confrontations between police and protesters, resulting in loss of lives and properties. Reports of burning vehicles, looting, and police using tear gas and live gunshot rounds to disperse protesters flooded in from Kano, Borno, Yobe, Nasarawa states. Unconfirmed reports indicated a tragic loss of life, with 1 person shot dead in Abuja and Kano, 2 killed in Jigawa, 6 reportedly gunned down by security forces in Niger, 4 died in Borno, and 3 in Kaduna State. The Kano State Police Command says it has arrested numerous suspects who exploited the demonstration to engage in malicious activities, including violence, destruction, looting, and harming innocent civilians. The situation remains volatile, with concerns about further escalation. We're joined this morning by human rights activist Segun Awosonya to look at what exactly has happened and what the expectations are going so far. Good morning, Mr. Awosonya, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning, distinguished. I'm not an activist. I'm an advocate. Institutional reforms advocate.
Thank you for clarifying
not
that.
An activist.
Thank you very much for clarifying that. All right. In your capacity as an advocate, we'd like you to speak to the protest, your feedback from day one of the protest, looking at how well citizens' rights may have been protected or not, and what your expectations for day 2 are.
Thank you very much. We saw this coming, and we tried as much as possible to convince Nigerians to embrace dialogue. That the call for protest was not a call for demonstrating your civic right, more or less a call to come and demonstrate your rage, a call to come and revolt, a call to come and be the worst yourself, a call to give yourself to your emotions and allow yourself to be used by the spirit of the mob. And when that happens, you can never expect anything good to come out of it, even if the police were at their best. And I can commend the Nigerian police for trying as much as possible to maintain peace. But because the clarion call, that picked or that exploited the pains, the genuine pains of Nigerians, was usurped by those who want this to be a chaos or a carnival of chaos across Nigeria, we have seen the outcome as predicted. You see, in the face of mounting societal challenges, economic hardships, and security concerns, it is all too easy to be swept up in the tide of these emotions and incitement that can lead to civil unrest and further deterioration of our collective well-being. We have been wired to believe that protest is the only way that we can engage our authorities and get them to listen to us. And people want to put their skin in the game, to jump on the street, jump on the bandwagon and begin to demonstrate, forgetting that alone is a vulnerability that can be exploited by other people. When you say a national protest, what you are saying is that you're assuming that you have a semblance of control, which you don't, because you don't know the spirit in the hearts of the minds of the people that will come and join you on the protest. Some may have the agenda under the veil of that protest that they are going to carry out. And whether you like it or not, you have to own and take responsibility for whatever happens. You see, if you read more from the likes of Carl Jung, if you read the book called The Madness of the Crowd, you understand that when people crowd together and form a mob, then the dynamism of the collective man are let loose. Beasts or demons that lie dormant in every person until he is part of the mob will be eminent. And man in mass sinks unconsciously to an inferior moral and intellectual level when they are in the midst of the crowd. And that's exactly what is playing out here. We must be able to apply our education and use it to better our society.
Right,
it is not about the emotions, because discontent alone doesn't solve problems.
All right, Mr. Osai, there's many points that I want to pick up from there, but let me start with the kudos to the police. The Daily Independent reports 14 killed. The Punch reports 17 killed. Why are we giving kudos to the police in particular after 17 lives have been lost?
17 lives were lost in the bid to curb the protest. And it is unfortunate that lives were lost, but you can also remember that there are 36 states and the FCT in the country. And we did not have the same violence recorded in other states. So we must still give kudos to the police because we do not have all-out chaos as planned by those who incited the public to go out on an all-out protest without having the means and capacity to cooperate with the authorities to curb the violence.
Here's the thing, you know, the persons that you speak of now, I remember in the build-up to the protest, I've always maintained that it was meant to be a peaceful protest. If you say that it was, you know, it was going to be infiltrated by hoodlums, by thugs, by whichever word, you know, that you choose to use, that is not necessarily going to be placed on the people who have repeatedly said that they want to carry out a peaceful protest. That is going to be placed on the police and the ability to also control the possible excesses of these people. So again, if the police has allegedly killed 17 people, why are we giving them kudos?
My point is very clear. And my point is to the fact that we do not have the entire nation engulfed with chaos, as planned by those who incited the public and pushed them to the streets. That's
why I keep jumping in, because when you say as planned where and where's the evidence that it was planned?
As planned. Look, there are evidence. Look at the demands of the protest. It was actually designed to create a stalemate that would keep people on the street. No going back. Day of rage, day of revolt. It was not. That doesn't sound peaceful. Unless you have been living under a rock in the past years, you will know that the myth called peaceful protest has never been experienced in reality in the history of Nigeria, right from the 1965 till date. Every peaceful protest have had cause to be enforced upon by different elements that were held constant by the organizers. You cannot say national protest and think it is only your group that will come out. Hoodlums are citizens of society too. They heard that you have declared the National Day of Rage. They will interpret it the way they want and they will do their own thing. How many police officers do we have in the country?
Does that mean from what you're saying, because there was a protest in 2012, so what you're saying is that Nigerians should almost never get to exercise that right that they have to peacefully protest because of the possibility of hoodlums and thugs infiltrating the protest. Is that what you're saying?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm speaking in English, and I'm saying there are means through which you can engage the state. It has been done before. We changed the Nigerian Police Act in this same country without protesting. Protest came much later. It was done in September, as I said. We've signed Police Act, Police Trust Fund, and Police Act into law without burning a single tire. It has happened before, and this is police we're talking about. People were killed in their encounters, and we did not say because of that the country must be engulfed by a chaos. That's what I'm saying. There are methods to the madness.
Yeah,
so you cannot just put vulnerable people and tell them because they're hungry, they can take to the street, take laws into their hands and do whatever they please.
So you change the Police Act when?
There not to be chaos.
Just clarify.
The police have the duty as well.
Yeah, clarify when you said the police.
2020 as at September, before the protest.
Okay.
As of September. The NSAS Reform Police NGA advocacy started since 2017.
Okay, great.
Because the media has misinformed the public, making it look as if NSAS started in October.
Oh, great. So we don't center this conversation around
and
NSAS.
Confuse the people.
Kindly hold on. So we don't center this conversation around NSAS. I'm just saying I don't want to center it around NSAS, but if necessary, we'll bring that up. But again, you keep talking about the different ways with which decisions can be made, and you refer to the Police Act and whatnot. Are you then saying that with all these different ways that things can be achieved, that Nigerians should continue to shelve their constitutionally guaranteed right to peaceful protest simply because of the possibility that it could be, you have thugs infiltrate the protest? Or do you agree that Nigerians should be able to protest?
This is what I'm saying. Yes, of course, I agree we should be able to protest. But you must look at the policy before you begin to put yourself out there to be vulnerable before people who will use your protest for something else. Safety first. That's what I'm saying.
When is the polity ever calm enough to protest? This sounds like you would never get to actually protest. What time, what moments would you say are great? This is a good time to protest. We seem to have lost Mr. Wosonya. I hope that he joins us back. You know, and okay, Mr. Wosonya, can you hear us now?
I am here.
All right. So when is the convenient time to protest?
In this day and age, where it is difficult to know what is true and what is not, we need to understand how to get to the bottom of whatever it is that we are protesting for. In other words, we define what we're going out for. We know why we're doing what we're doing. We have engaged the authorities. We have exhausted all other lawful means before we can begin to take to the streets. This is how you can get results and not chaos. Okay. But if you decide to say we're taking to the street because we are angry, it will not yield good results.
All right, Mr.
That is what I'm simply saying. We need to admit that and not let people... Yes.
If I'm reporting at this point, regarding this particular protest, there was sufficient time given. Many would argue that we had given sufficient time, and whatever could have been done, whatever, you know, mediation or conversation or dialogue could have been had within the duration, and nothing of the sort was done. Isn't that something to look at?
Dialogue with whom? Who are the people behind the protest? How have they engaged the authorities? They have simply declared 10 days.
Go ahead, please.
Now, let us be very objective with this. Let us be very objective. We have several groups, mostly faceless, making several demands. As far as I'm concerned, I can count about 20 different demands, ranging from the deletion of the Nigerian Constitution to the removal of the Senate entirely, and to the immediate release of Nnamdi Kano, and several other demands, which are ludicrous. And even besides, if you can even make a point for certain things, there are most of the things that you're asking for in some other demands have already been done by the authorities. But I can say that on the side of the authorities, there had not been enough engagement. You cannot have 70% of your population being youth and you will not know how to engage them. They say the teachers of the future are those who can teach the way the youth rather. Have you been able to go to where they are to engage them? I know of late, before the 1st of August, I have organized how ministers can come and talk to the people and give account of stewardship of what they have done in areas where they have been asking questions. But I'm not government. Government have a duty with their bloated 46 ministers and God knows how many aides that they have that are youthful. They could have done better. Not only in reaction to the protest, but in carrying Nigerians along with their policies, with their plans, and with their projects that shows that they are actually responding to cushioning the impact of their policies, as well as the geopolitical situation that we are in with the war in Ukraine and the rest of them, putting pressure on all economies, including the UK, Canada, and US. So Nigeria is not the only country facing hardship now. We buy some things for £20 that we now buy for something pounds. Nobody is saying the government of the United Kingdom should resign or should leave power. Nobody is saying Biden should come down or any of those things. So it is a general problem. But Nigeria, in the Nigerian context, how are this government responded?
I'd like you to answer.
Did they engage the people the way they ought to? They have not.
Okay. Yeah, so why do you think they haven't?
Yes, you said you like.
Why do you think they haven't engaged with the people?
That's what I'm saying. That is on them to explain. Because one, for me, from where I'm standing, I'm believing that beyond the protest, there is a palpable discontent amidst the people who are facing serious hardship. They cannot get by, they cannot afford to feed themselves, some of them have lost their jobs, they cannot transport themselves to where they are. I know also there are certain things government have done in this regard, but it has not been well communicated. They are winking in the dark, as I have often said. And based on that culpability is on their side. Engaging the process as a while, nobody can wake up in the morning and then declare 10 days of public holiday for age, and then the government will be running helter-skelter. That's not how it's done. Number one, they need to identify who these people are. They need to find other means of engaging these people if they are known. They need to begin to rub hands to say, how do you go about this?
But
I don't want to bring in the answers, because this is not about answers. But I'm simply saying, you said
I'm trying to find out, engage who? When you say they should engage the protesters, engage who exactly?
That's what I'm... You see, that's the question that I'm asking you. Who are the leaders of this? They asked Falana, he said he does not know who they are.
Okay.
Whereas there are some sons who are representing them, who are saying that they should leave them to occupy.
Okay.
Just so that the nation, the democracy can be threatened. We will not hand over the right of the entire 200 and something million people to the mob. That's not the way it works.
Okay, so
define what you're engaging government on.
So in a situation where there is a lack of a particular person or group of persons that you can say are the leaders of the protesters, I wouldn't call them a mob. When there's no particular person, have you seen that the Nigerian government has then decided, let me also speak with Nigerians? Let me express to Nigerians, enough of, consolation words and ways to, let them know that they're in safe hands. Has President Tinubu done that?
Yes, the President Tinubu has done that in his own ways.
How?
Maybe he didn't do that enough, probably through national TVs. But in a few days, a week to the 1st of August, there have been robust engagement of the ministers with the citizenry, with the citizens of Nigeria, on Twitter. It has been done. They are doing that. In fact, it's running as I'm speaking to you now.
Yeah, and why do
a lot of people who have participated in this. A lot of people who have participated in this protest shunned that action because of the things that they heard from their ministers. But I believe that could have been done earlier before now. That could have been done even before anybody declared protest.
All right,
which is why I'm saying nobody is giving kudos to government for the gap that have been created in communication. Mr.
Owosonya, if I may add, we see that the president did have, we can assume that the president did have good intentions, of course, when he had the ministerial update. And Nigerians didn't seem very pleased by a lot of that. It didn't seem to generate a number of the results because he had promised that if they were underperforming ministers, these ministers would be fired. We haven't seen any ministers being fired. So saying now that the minister is speaking on behalf of the president as a mouthpiece of the president, is explanation enough or can be interpreted as action by the president? Some people will not agree with that because there have been calls for the president. The last time we've seen a tweet on the president's page was on the 26th of July, wishing the Nigerians, all the best at the Paris Olympics. There has been nothing that has been said by him. And one of the hallmarks of great leadership is empathy, the ability to connect with the people, to let the people know that you feel their pulse. Yes, Wike can say all he wants. He's not the president of the country. The governor of Lagos State, Governor Sanwo-Olu, can come out and speak as he has been doing, but he's not the president of the country. Nigerians have been asking, where is our president?
I believe in the right time, the president is going to at the right time, he's going to address the nation.
What is the right time?
Address the nation, but I believe I'm not in the administration. And I don't know what their plans are. But all I can say is that I know that you're not in the administration.
I promise, and I'm sorry to interject. I just wanted to add this. I know you're not in the administration. I want to assume that you're not probably holding brief for them. What I'm saying is, if you say that the actions of the president through his ministers have communicated empathy, and I'm saying to you that what we have seen and what we've heard from Nigerians, from the streets, from social media, is that they want to hear from their president and they want to feel like they can connect to him and that he feels their pulse. So you're saying that you believe that he will speak at the right time. When is the right time? People have died. Reports have it that about 16 people died on day one. Is it not about time that the president spoke to the people? We saw Kenya, what happened in Kenya. Eventually, the president he came on a space on X to be able to address the citizens. Don't Nigerians deserve to hear from their president?
Nigerians actually deserve to hear from their president. President ought to have addressed the populace, the masses, the people, those who elected him into office. He owes them that. He also owes them to the rights to be carried along and to be engaged, to have ownership in his administration. We're saying the same thing, and I'm asking the same question. Why is to address the public? But also to say that because he has not tweeted in a while, he has not said anything on his timeline, and those are issues that we have actually raised in most of the discussions that we've been having, that how can you have 46 ministers and we cannot feel the impact of these ministers? Because you cannot be everywhere as a president, you can only address, but we should be able to see the buy-in of your ministers in your policies enough for them to be the front facer of those policies and give account to the public on what they are doing, where they are, what their challenges are, and what we should hold for the people. I'm very aware that the administration believes that they've done a lot in cushioning the high cost of living to be able to get a bit of a buy-in of the public to what they're doing, with their minimum wage, which has now been negotiated to be 70,000, with the import duties that have been suspended on both pharmaceutical and essential food items, with 30,000 petrol, commercial vehicles that are being converted into CNGs, with money that has been earmarked for student loans, and so many other things that they have done. But again, to an average Nigerian who bought yam for 500 naira and are buying at 70,000 naira or 25,000 naira or more now, they don't feel the impact of government. And that's we're saying people have the right to ask questions. People have the right to hold their government accountable. People have the right to say, we are not happy with what this administration is doing because this is what you are feeling from where we stand. That is fine. But to incite these people and say, come to the street and display your rage, demonstrate your rage, you have left so many things unconsidered because you do not know how every individual will express themselves and their anger when they get to the street. Some will do it by looting, some will do it by killing their enemies, some will do it by burning stuff, some will do it by... So to blanketly say, hiding under the constitutional provision that gives you the right to assemble, the right to express yourself, and the right to protest, at this point, will lead to further chaos and it will not better anything, the conversation. This is what I stand, and this is what I'm saying. Thank you.
Mr. Osanya, would you hold the government accountable for the loss of those 17 lives?
Oh, I will hold the inciters of the public responsible for those lives.
Who are the inciters?
Yes.
Who are these
Those
inciters?
who incited the public.
Yeah, who are they?
We all know them. We all know them. Who are they? Yes.
So would you say that you would, so you would like that Momoyele Sowore is questioned for the the loss of these lives?
Yes, because he brought them out to the street. He asked them to come for 10 days of rage.
So Momoyele Sowore should be questioned.
He asked them to revolt. He's not even in the country to read it.
Yeah, just let me just clarify.
And his lawyers and those who represent him on this one, yes.
Yeah, so what you're saying is that Momoyele Sowore should be questioned for the loss of lives, even if those lives were lost to the bullets of Nigerian police officers.
Who brought them out? They didn't go to their house to shoot them. That's what I'm saying. When I was calling for NSAS, I said people should take to the streets just so that laws can be changed. If lives lost, I will be held accountable. And I was ready for that. Leaders are communicators. Leaders are people who have done their homework before they come out and rally the people and galvanize critical mass to support whatever ideals they believe in. So you must count the cost before you hit the street. You must count the cost before you rally Nigeria around to come and do around any agenda. And you must be ready to lead from the front. I did that. And I'm standing today. Not running from court to court and not running away from authorities.
Yeah, but
so that's what I'm saying.
Just to be clear.
So we must say the culpability must be put where it belongs.
Yeah, just to be clear, what you are accusing Momoyele Sowore of is encouraging Nigerians.
It's not an accusation. It is obvious.
No, but,
it's not an accusation. It is an obvious thing.
Yeah. What you're accusing him of is advocating and advising Nigerians to exercise their civil, constitutionally guaranteed rights to a peaceful protest. That's what you're saying is a crime that he should be maybe arrested for.
That's not what you have stated. Is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is somebody incited the public,
incited them to carry out their constitutionally guaranteed rights to peaceful protest.
No.
Or incited them to
come and
destroy government property
and revolt against their. No, read the demands. They're still there. They're littering the social media space. This is what people read, and this is what they reacted to. It is a day of rage where you can revolt against the administration that have been targeted as the cause of your situation. Regardless of what is happening all over the world, you should come out and revolt and demand that the constitution of the land be deleted. Yeah. These are the exact words of these galvanizers. Don't let us caramelize it. Don't let us put a foil around it. Don't let us give it another meaning. If you are peaceful, protesting peacefully, police can never shoot at you as a wear unless there is an agitation or there's something that is going on in the mix of things that led to that miscommunication. Okay. So that is that. If they are not on the streets, there will not be such confrontation that will require the loss of life. We warned about this earlier, that people should engage the authorities using alternative means and exhausting all lawful means before taking to the streets. But the media will rather report sensations rather than reporting the facts.
All right, Mr. Ashagun Awosonya, we'd like to imagine that our security agencies are also trained on how to, disperse where there are situations of protest in the events that it, goes out of hand. But I don't know that there'll be any excuse for the loss of lives. But this is an ongoing conversation because this is still day 2 of the protest, and we'll certainly love to speak with you again to see if your position remains the same or has changed before the end of the protest. Thank you very much, Ashagun Awosonya, advocate, for joining us on the show. All right.
I just want to quickly chip in, that, I don't have any opinions, but the same person who said, that they were able to get new police laws and policing laws, still can't find it within himself to question the loss of 17 lives to the bullets of, allegedly, the bullets of Nigerian, policemen. So I'm not sure exactly what new regulations or what new laws either they were able to pull together or police reforms that, Ashagun Awosonya says that they were able to achieve in September of 2020.
Well, to say that in Section 83 of the law, to ensure that if you communicate your location of for protest, that the police should be able to take care of you. But in this case, the police has not necessarily shown duty of care. Is there going to be investigation as to what led to the killing of these people? I would always ask, what is the value of a Nigerian life? What really is the value of a Nigerian life? But that's not the conversation that we can give the answers to. You have to share your thoughts on X at News Central TV. We'll keep talking about this, but for now, we'll go on the break. When we come back, we'll review the newspapers and then we'll open the phone lines. If you have thoughts you'd like to share about the protest, about the big stories, typically the big stories this morning on the papers are all just talking about the protest. So if you'd like to share your thoughts about the protest, now's your chance. We'll open the phone lines after this break. And now it's time for us to review the front pages of the newspapers, to hear from our analysts, but also to hear from you, because this is where we open the phone lines. So you can get to call in and react to any of the stories that you'd like. We're joined this morning by public affairs analyst Owade Ahimie. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Olive. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you as well.
How's the protest been going? Roads are free.
I wanted to say now God hand the day, but man, the update is not really exciting to see what's happening. The lives that have been lost could have been avoided. This protest could have been avoided, but unfortunately, here's where we are now.
Well, my own advice to everyone is be cautious. Let's continually go around activities with peace. Those who have thoughts of being nefarious should please just stay in their houses and let those who want to just walk around. It's a good form of exercise for me. Just protesting. So for those who haven't been exercising, this might be a good time for you to exercise.
Okay, let's begin the conversation with this Nigerian newspaper. On the front page of this Nigeria, of course, everyone's talking about the protest. Nationwide protest, states, cities grounded. 8 killed in Niger, Borno, several injured in Kaduna, Jigawa, other states. Kano, Borno, Yobe imposed curfew over looting and violence. Southeast presidents shun demonstrations. Abuja residents protest, defy court restriction as Tinubu Wike meet in Aso Rock. African Airlines records 16% passenger growth in June 2024. NDLEA seizes 606,998 kilograms of illicit drugs, nabs 159 suspects in Kaduna. Increased landing cost of petrol may trigger price hike, says experts. But still going on. Nigerian students decry the marketing of Dangote refinery. That's all on this Nigerian newspaper. Let's move to the next.
All right, the Punch newspapers next. Hunger protest, 17 feared killed as firms and others count huge losses. 10 killed in Niger, Borno, 7 in Kano, others. Federal government complex looted, APC secretariat razed. We can also see pictures from the protest yesterday. FCE governing council removes provost, appoints replacement. We can also find here police arrest 6, exhume body of Ekiti Varsity ex DVC. a very sad story with the killing of Justice Ajumogbia's daughter. It says here, house help admits killing of Justice Ajumogbia's daughter. Very painful. We can also find top of the screen, AFDB OK's $500 million fresh loan for Nigeria. Ribado's men abduct punch photographer, steal camera and belongings. 30 million GSM lines not properly linked to NIN, says the telcos. And of course, final story, Dangote refinery to gulp 1.7 trillion naira crude monthly, says a report. The next newspaper this morning is going to be the Daily Independent, quickly. 14 killed, several injured as arson, looting trailed day one of protest. Borno, Yobe, Kano governors impose 24-hour curfew. IGP puts police on red alert, says officer was killed. Equities markets react to nationwide protest, down 0.42%. And also, Nigeria breaks world record as 30,000 mothers breastfeed babies in one day. Okay. Life will be better after this phase of hardship, Fubara assures. Nigerian students pass vote of confidence in Dangote refinery, and also review your anti-people policies, PDP charges, Tinubu. And the final one that we have this morning, protesters trooped to Buhari's residence, Emira's Palace in Daura.
All right. Before we get into the conversation, let's quickly connect with our correspondent in Abuja. We have Emmanuel Bagudu, and let's find out what the situation is at this time. Good morning, Emmanuel. Where are you, first of all, and what is the situation where you are?
Good morning. I'm right in front of Moshood Abiola Stadium, where protesters have just begun to converge. And it's very dicey. I came in, the security operatives are so hostile this morning. I sent a lot of videos. They've been chasing protesters away. Despite the fact this is the legal place. So as I speak to you, there's a reimbursement of security officials right now at Moshood Abiola Stadium. And they have been hostile to some protesters. I have one who has actually been harassed. Hello, sir.
Yeah, good morning.
He's going to give us an account of the harassment he got from the police officers this morning. So he's very, very hostile right now in Abuja. You can talk to him.
Good morning. This morning, we came out for peaceful protest this morning at Baga roundabout Abuja here. And we were gathered here peaceful, and they came to address us that we should leave. I said, oh, no, we are being peaceful here. Before you know it, the DPO Utako started harassing us. They started shooting tear gas on us, and they took my phone from me. And everybody, see my friend, his leg, they wounded his leg, everything. We're like, I don't know what, we didn't do anything this morning, nothing at all. They started beating us and started molesting us and shooting tear gas and chasing people away just for nothing, just for peaceful protest this morning in Baga roundabout Abuja.
Just to quickly ask.
I just ran into a hostile security situation right now.
All right. Emmanuel, can you maybe share?
Initially, I reported that the place is empty, but all of a sudden, they appeared and start shooting sporadically, and then they want to just start harassing people right now. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Emmanuel. Can you maybe ask, I don't know if you know, maybe you can also ask the guest with you there, what exactly is their, what are they saying, the police officers, that is? Why did they feel the need to start shooting? And just to clarify, are they shooting live bullets or are they shooting tear gas? But Moshood Abiola was the approved place for the protest to happen according to the ex parte injunction gotten by the court, I believe. So if they are gathering at the Moshood Abiola Stadium and the police are chasing them, why are the police chasing them? What are they saying as they're chasing them away from there?
All right, we'll try and reconnect with Emmanuel Bagudu as things develop in the Federal Capital Territory this morning. Let's get into the newspapers this morning and get the discussions going. Wade Aimia joins us. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Good to have you. I mean, first of all, your reactions to yesterday's protest and, of course, how things are turning up today. We just saw a report from the Federal Capital Territory, and it's not very exciting.
So first and foremost, my condolences to the families of those who lost or those who lost their lives. Irrespective of what anybody says, they're still human beings first and foremost, and they're Nigerians. Let's remember that. But the fact remains that both the government and the protesters should remember that there should be a form of communication, which is dialogue. Tempers will flare. But there must always be someone who is willing to listen and be able to calm the tempers so that we don't go into chaotic situations. That's one. To those who have planned nefarious activities in their mind, should please just desist so that we don't end up, having more Nigerians killed or dying in the name of trying to get a better country. So that's it. But at the end of the day, for me, let's remember one thing, that according to the constitutions, people are allowed to protest. The responsibility of government is actually to listen. I remember Occupy Nigeria in 2012.
Yeah.
Initially it started off with so much friction, but after the second day, because those in authority began to listen, came out and listened to what people were saying, and then went back and started the dialogue. And I think that's the approach we should take. We shouldn't be high-handed because we are all Nigerians and we're looking for the betterment of Nigeria. Policies, like I continue to say, I have been an advocate of taking out fuel subsidy. I don't think it's something that's going to come back. I don't think it should come back because there is too much waste in that system. But like I said, I think it's time for us to go into the next step of starting to build industries rather than palliatives. I've never supported palliatives. Palliatives are always short-term measures. But let's remember that when we start to put our young people into jobs, are you with me? The idle mind is the devil's workshop. But when you start to build the industries and services that would get them into jobs, even if they are unskilled, people might say, but everybody has a skill. It could just be on an assembly line, but at least you're earning something every day and you can feed yourself. So both sides should, I saw yesterday that the protesters have sent out their 10-point demand. If I were those in the administration, most especially the president of the nation, he should actually come out and accept and say, okay, I've seen this. And so let's quickly look at it and come back to
quickly. Hold on. Let's go back to the FCT. Emmanuel Bagudu, can you hear us clearly?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
All right. I think we were trying to find out earlier. You already expressed, that it was pretty tense over there in the FCT this morning.
Yes.
Is there any conversation you've heard from the police as to why they seem to be agitated by the protesters and the presence there?
Yes. There is a lot of hostility right now at the Moshood Abiola Stadium, where we have a massive deployment and reimbursement of security officials who have actually been harassing protesters, dispersing protesters at all costs. Initially, I've been speaking to a victim who has been harassed. Hello, sir. Can we just have... he's been harassed.
Good morning, the viewers. God's Nigerian. My name is Comrade Okafo Rene. This morning, we came out at Beggar Roundabout, Abuja, to protest peacefully without harassing anybody. And they came to address us. We said, okay, no problem. Before we knew it, they started shooting tear gas at us, started harassing us. And before we started running, one of them grabbed me and collected my phone. And I could, because of the tear gas in my eyes, I'm still crying. And I could not turn back because I was trying to save my life. I ran away. And now, if we came back to the National Stadium, and they came back here again to harass us again. So, please, Nigerians, what we need is a good governance. We are not asking for much. The cost of living is too much here. And we have been begging the government to reduce the cost of governance. The fuel subsidy, everything in Nigeria, everything. People are suffering. I have a business. I have now almost 20, 35 employers, and I'm paying them 50,000 naira a month. And we pay them before they go to work and come back. And in the month, they spend the money, and they're not doing anything with the money. And it says not come out and protest. Why? That's why I'm here to protest. Please, Mr. President, reduce the cost of living in Nigeria. We are tired of bad governance. Your ministers, everybody, they are corrupt. Ababio and everybody, they are corrupt. We don't need them again in this governance. Please, that's what we are begging for. We are not begging for any other thing.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Emmanuel Bagudu, we have to quickly move on to Bernard. But before we move on, we want to hear very quickly from you. Asagi had asked, and I asked this earlier, do we have any explanation as to why the police is doing what they're doing in Abuja, pursuing protesters? Have you heard anything yet as to why they're doing that?
Sorry, I didn't get. Do you have any explanation on what?
As to why the police is pursuing protesters?
Yes. The police are actually, the reason why the police are actually hostile this morning is because if you look at the body language of both the press conference statement of the IG and that of the FCT Minister yesterday, they were actually very, very particular on cracking down on those infiltrating the protest or cracking down on those breaking law and order. So probably in the course of doing their duty, they must have, stepped on the feet of innocent citizens, such as this gentleman who I just spoke about. So the massive turnout of security forces here at the Moshood Abiola Stadium is like, it has tripled compared to yesterday. Yeah. And so they are not even being nice at all. They are not even making it, unlike yesterday when you saw the video we shared where police officers were actually calm and were even escorting protesters down to the Eagle Square. It's not the case today. They are no longer smiling. They are no longer acting like yesterday. Yeah. They are being hostile, and then they are making life very, very difficult.
All right, Emmanuel.
As I speak.
All right, we'll reconnect with you again in a bit, I believe. I'm guessing that the police are reacting mostly to the words from the IGP that we saw in the news this morning, and the probably the messaging from the IGP is what has changed their reaction towards the protesters. But Emmanuel Bagudu will join you again, or will bring you in again to share live updates. Let's go back to Wade this morning. First of all, your reaction to that, and then we'll talk about the government.
First and foremost, like I said at the beginning, I think the police also should be calm in carrying out their activities. Even the protesters, when they speak to you, go in the right direction and obey the law. So we just don't get unnecessarily agitated on both sides. I know tempers are rising, but at the end of the day, we must have a listening ear from both parties. And because when you listen, then you hear, and then you know what's the right thing to do, or what's the next thing to do. I think one of the other things I think the police can also do is get speakers so that they can actually speak to the protesters as they come, because a number of people will probably be screaming and shouting. So at least those who are the leaders or leading the procession can actually hear, and then they can ensure that they abide by the rules and regulation of getting into the designated place.
There's we spoke with Segun Osonya just before you joined us, and one of the things that he repeatedly mentioned was the, allegations that there are certain people who were inciting the mob, inciting the protesters against the Nigerian government, trying to take advantage of their hunger and frustration, to create chaos across the country. Is that the same way you've seen, what's going on? Do you analyze it the same way?
Well, so let me put it this way. We all live in Nigeria, over 200 million of us, 147 million in multidimensional poverty. And at the end of the day, no matter what you say, I can speak, and it's also a personal decision also to go out or to join anything I want to do. But yes, it's possible that there are those who are inciting the mob. Now, the question is, which mob are you inciting? Are you inciting a peaceful mob? If you're doing that, please just stop that. The second part also, like I said, it's a two-party thing. It's not a one-way traffic. Those who are in authority should also listen to what people are saying, and not just, gather everybody as one group and call them a mob. I've seen protests in my life, right from my younger days being in higher institutions, right up to the NSAS. And at the end of the day, the most important thing for us is, yes, there is disruption of economic flow, which is something that shouldn't happen. But at the end of the day, peace and security is the most important thing. Why? Because at the end of the day, let's all remember, we're all going to go back and go and look for a source of income. So if we destroy people's properties, or we harass people, these people also need to find a source of income and make a way for them to live and eat their daily bread and butter, if that is possible every day.
One of the things that has been, probably noticed, I did say earlier, maybe for the third time this morning, that a nationwide protest 14 months after inauguration is like a report card of what the government has, how it has fared in managing Nigeria as a country, and also managing the idea of dissenting voices. Would you say that the trust deficit is as a result of complete mismanagement of the affairs of Nigeria, or the Tinubu administration just, just fails to communicate appropriately.
All right, whilst we are putting together your thoughts, let's quickly head to our correspondent here in Lagos. We have Bernard Kayode. Good morning, Bernard. Where are you at this time? And what's the update? I can see that there's a crowd around you. What's going on?
Yeah, but we can't hear you. Okay, go ahead.
Okay,
Please go ahead.
Yes. All right. It's a bit difficult for me to hear you, so please just give me like 5 minutes to run some kind of quick commentary because of the noise in the background. Now, we arrived here first of all, and there were comments between the protesters and the police. The police restricted the protesters to the curb here. But while we were here, the gentleman beside me was here addressing or speaking to the police officers. I'll take his name and I'll briefly ask him what the conversation was earlier in the day. Good morning, sir. Good morning. Tell us who you are and what your conversation with the police was at the beginning of the day.
Okay, my name is Akitu Olawoy. I'm a member, Joint Action Force. Earlier today, when we got here, we saw that some of our people were coming on after the other. At a particular stage, the police mentioned that they were not going to allow us to stay on the road, that we should go into the park. For which we said, ordinarily, the right to protect the fundamental human right. And we have been orderly and so far. Yesterday there was no breakdown of law and order. And that we have every right to stay on the camp. So after that conversation, they said, okay, if we stay there, once our recording, our sound system arrives, that we should go inside. So we said, okay, at least for now, we will definitely maintain outside here. And that is what we did. All right, that was the first conversation that I'm very happy. Okay, before the
now, after that, there was another altercation, and this sadly was quite a scary one because there were certain persons who arrived here. Clearly, they were not part of this organized protest, and the protesters there rose some kind of.
Bernard, unfortunately, the sound quality is not its best this morning from Ojota, but we hope that we can tweak it a little bit and, of course, bring you in again. Let's of course, continue with Mr. Wade, who's here with us. Just, final thoughts as we go into day 2.
So you asked the question earlier, and let me just briefly attend to that.
Yeah.
So it's a combination of a number of things. I don't think, in terms of some of the policies that have been put out, that I think the government has done extremely well by putting out those policies. But it's one thing to write a policy, it's another thing to implement it. So I think it's the implementation. But I in my own opinion, I think one of the major things is the issue of communication, and that's where the issue of mistrust has really come in.
Yeah.
The way communication goes beyond what you say, it's also the body language and how people see and feel that you are reacting. I might be calm, but my tone is being harsh. So people will just say, he's angry, irrespective of you looking at his face, and there's a smile on his face, but you can hear from that tone. So I think that is really somewhere that the government needs to work on in terms of communicating with Nigerians and all. And then on a final note, I'll just quickly share this. I watched a movie not too long ago about a man called Sirikant Bola. He's blind, the first Indian to go to do science in high school, the first blind Indian to graduate from the MIT. And the one thing I took away from him is building industries for the differently abled, which people will call disabled, and helping them find their voice. I was speaking earlier on just now, is that I better pass my neighbor is not for you to oppress him, but for you to be able to create an environment where he too can make a living and respect you for creating that environment. So I'll leave that with the president. I hope he's hearing us.
Oh, well,
All right.
We'll see.
Wade Ahimian, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We hope that we can have a peaceful rest of the week, and we hope to have you again, as usual. Join us to review the papers.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
Have a great day, everyone.
All right, now let's still head here in Lagos State and once again try to reconnect with our correspondent, Bernard Akede. Bernard, please go ahead. We hope that the audio is clearer now.
All right, thank you, Olive. I will quickly reiterate what the gentleman has said before I go to the next thing. Now, he said that there was a little bit of, well, let me say conversation between the protesters and the police, the peaceful protesters, might I add, and the police as to where to use for the protest. And eventually, the police wanted to restrict them to inside of the park. But eventually, after much conversation, the police allowed that they use here, provided that they do not distract traffic flow or disturb traffic flow, and so they were restricted to the curb, and we said that earlier. However, not long after that, there was another disturbance. A group of men stormed the area that were not part of this protest, and the peaceful protesters rose alarm and called the attention of the police. These men went into the park here, and then there was some kind of altercation, I would say, and that's the part that I think, you know, struck me as a part of interest. I would like you to briefly explain what exactly happened, who these gentlemen are, and what the decision of the police eventually was.
Okay, as I said earlier on, yesterday we protested peacefully, but we were not also unaware of the machinations of the regime. Left to them, they never wanted the protest to take place. So they've been sponsoring a whole lot of individuals, including some agent provocateur. It took maturity and restraint from us yesterday not to give in to their pressure, so that they will not blackmail us that, okay, the protest has been hijacked. So today again, we were already prepared for them. We knew that these hired thugs will eventually come. So when they came, we told and alerted the police that you see that we've been peaceful throughout. No single provocation from us, no single destruction, no single violence. So allow us to protest peacefully. So immediately we saw those guys, very organized, numbering about 30. You will know that these are hired thugs who came purposely to disrupt this protest. So we raised the alarm, and that was why we faced the whole press, and we told the whole world that ours remains a peaceful protest, and we have inalienable rights to peacefully protest, and that the police has a duty to protect us from being armed by this individual. Right. So we overpowered them through our voice, through our noise, and every other thing, and they had to leave. Okay. So that was what happened.
All right. Now, finally, Olive, if you give me one more minute, let me conclude on this. What was the conclusion by the police? Because we saw that these men came into the park, and you guys were in the park as well. You were confronted by the men, confronted by the police. It was a long conversation.
Yes.
What was the conclusion? Did the police restrict you to the park, or have you been granted freedom to protest here?
Just as we said, the question of coming to the park is also a question of, okay, if the park is safe enough for us. But people had concerns. They believe that that place is completely covered. What if the same police who could not be trusted when they said that we could stay here and that those guys will not come and disturb us? What if we go inside there, camped in a place, and they come and attack us? So that was the basis of saying that, okay, we are not disrupting traffic flow. We are not disrupting traffic flow. So we can still stay outside and remain peaceful. And that is what we have been doing. It remains a peaceful protest. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. All right, Olive Osaroge, there is basically the conversation that's the activity that's been going on so far. If you can hear me, now the police have addressed the people. The people are quite ecstatic because somebody arrived here with brandishing a huge Nigerian flag. You'll see that very soon. But basically, I think that there may be a bit of struggle with keeping the protest lawful and keeping it orderly so far. Yeah. Because more people are beginning to join the protest, and organizing movement is now difficult. You can see it's difficult for vehicles to pass. The protesters are still trying to ensure that the road remains organized such that vehicular movement is not hampered. But then that may be a challenge, and if it does become a challenge, then I've seen this happen before. The police may begin to use force to ensure that the road is clear. But so far, so good. This is a brief of all that's been going on since morning.
All right. Thank you very much, Bernard, for bringing up this for us. Please do stay safe. We look forward to reconnecting with you again.
Yeah.
Okay. More conversations will be had this morning, and we are fast coming to the end of our segment, but not before we share with you what the financial implications of this are, for our country. And also, we might just be heading back into the streets of X to find out what Nigerians are saying again.
All right. Now, to, of course, get into that conversation, and share the financial implications, the likely financial implications, or economic implications of this protest, we have joining us Segun Sopiton, who's here to help us x-ray that angle to it. Good morning, Mr. Sopiton. Thanks for joining us. Not very often, that anyone even mentions this part, but I saw that the whole of Lagos, from my experience, was shut down yesterday. Major supermarkets, were closed. Major, basically, business places were closed. If that's the same thing with the whole, country, what does that mean in just one day of a protest, and what could that, mean?
Well, I mean, look, it's a loss of productivity, and we have to recognize that productivity is.
All right. Hold on. We seem to have like a breaking story from the Federal Capital Territory. Emmanuel Bagudu, go ahead. What's going on over there?
Tear gas. Instead of shooting tear gas off, they are facing us direct as if they are fighting war. Is it a crime to fight for your right? After that, they finish all the tear gas. We run. All of us run away. When we get to Secretariat, they still come. Another set of mopo from police headquarters. They line up as if they are fighting war. Jogging outside. They even use barbed wire to barricade us. We did not cross the barbed wire. We are behind the barbed wire. And they still cross from the barbed wire, start shooting us. Is it a crime? Ademola? Yes. Yeah? Ifekoya. Yeah. Thank you.
Emmanuel Bagudu, just to double check, because we didn't get the beginning of that interview, what exactly happened to that man's face, and who inflicted the injuries on his face? Okay, we're hoping that we'll hopefully reconnect with Bagudu, but that didn't look good. That was very heart-wrenching. Obviously, he's inferring from the conversation that we had that security operatives had been attacking them because they're trying to exercise their right to protest. But like Osagi said at the beginning of the conversation, it's terrible. It's terrible to the Nigerian citizens. It's also terrible for our economy because businesses have been shut down. Absolutely. Now for the second day. Give us a picture of what this means, the financial implication of it.
So yesterday, the stock exchange reacted, of course, because a lot of the activities there are electronic. The stock exchange was open. But then it lost 258 billion in market capitalization yesterday. So that's an indication as to how the market is feeling about this. The markets do not want the disruption, and it's definitely affecting businesses. Another way to look at this is to just do a simple calculation of what our GDP is as a country. Yeah. Roughly, after the devaluation and all that, we are trending at around 350 billion US dollars as GDP for Nigeria. If you convert that to Naira, we're talking about 500 trillion Naira per annum GDP. So break that down 365 days. It means that technically we've lost about 1.4 trillion Naira in productivity yesterday, in productive activity. And that cannot be good for the economy. The longer this goes on, the more you will see loss of, irretrievable loss of business activities, which obviously would have an impact on the lives of the people, on government revenues, so that there's really no winner, when you have these types of disruptions. So which for me, that means that government should understand that there are so many consequences. We've seen the loss of lives yesterday. We've seen the loss of property. It will cost money to replace those properties. The lives that were lost, no amount of money can replace them. That's somebody gone for good. So the quicker government responds to these demands and puts this to an end, the better. Because, there really isn't any winner. Even if at the end of the day, we do get the demands, that people have put out there, addressed, right. We've still lost it at what cost,
Okay, we'll come back to still talk about the financial implications of this individually for businesses and as a nation, but let's head back to the nation's capital. We have Emmanuel Bagudu, who's on standby. And Emmanuel, you had interviewed a young man earlier who had a plaster on his face. He had shared how security operatives were shooting directly at them rather than shooting into the air. I'd like to please ask, do you have an idea what happened to his face, one? Two, also, what were they shooting at them? Was it tear gas? Was it live ammunition? What exactly happened?
Yes. It's all about stories about hostility by police officers attacking unsuspecting citizens, protesters with tear gas. Now I have, from the aftermath of what happened yesterday, I have a victim here who actually is, I confess that after witnessing this yesterday, he still had reasons to witness it again this morning, despite being injured. Maybe you listen to him here.
Oh, like yesterday, when we proceed from National Stadium here, going down to Eagle Square, even police, two Ilos police are escorting us down there. So on getting to the place, we are like, okay, trying to organize ourselves so that somebody should come and address us and talk to us. The next thing, the police did not even say anything. They did not even talk to us. The next thing, they just start to shoot tear gas direct to us, as if we are animal or they are fighting war. All of us run away. We don't owe anything, no arm, nothing. Is that the reason why for them to be facing us direct to shoot tear gas on us? Because we are fighting for our right. I'm a citizen of this country. So after that, they chase us away. They use barbed wire to barricade between us and the secretariat. We are behind the barbed wire, and they still come across the barbed wire again. Despite that, they have already crossed the place. And from there, they are still shooting us till they chase us to Finance Bridge. Before one of them now target me and shoot me the tear gas on my eye. Is it a crime?
Maybe just look at the injury very well, just how it looks like.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's not a good look. I'm so sorry. I hope that he's getting checked and that he goes to the hospital and has this checked out. And Emmanuel Bagudu, please do stay safe as well. We look forward to getting more updates from you in the subsequent shows this morning. Thank you for joining us. We have Joshua, who's also on standby. Okay, all right. We don't have him yet. We're sure that maybe the next guest will, the next anchors will have him. But you've seen what's happening. What message is this communicating to the international community, especially because we're a country that's constantly talking about looking for foreign investment? What message are we sending with this?
Instability, political instability is never a good thing for the investment climate and business environment. And, nobody will see this and want to come here to do business. So it's good to fly around the world and ask people to come here and invest their monies. But if you can't run your country in a manner that will prevent this type of breakdown of law and order, it sends a very, very disturbing signal. And bear in mind also that these protesters appear now to be under attack from instruments of state. So what does that say with regards to the rule of law, which is a fundamental requirement for business investment? Nobody's going to bring hundreds of millions of dollars or billions of dollars or billions of naira into an environment where the police can wantonly attack protesters with lethal force without consequences, because that will put them, will raise the question in their minds, what will happen to them if they have a dispute, some sort of a business dispute with someone? Can this police help them, get their rights, and all of that? So the messaging is very bad. The optics are not good. Yeah. And I think that the government has to step in. The silence is a bit disturbing. It's the second day, and there really hasn't been any official statement from, especially from the federal level.
I have been questioning, the silence, all week, and this looks like it is actually it's intentional. Yeah. It might be the strategy that they have. Stay silent, ignore it. It will blow past. And if it doesn't blow away, then we'll have to figure out another strategy at that point. Joshua Marai, good morning. Can you confirm your location and what's going on over there?
Business district in Abuja, particularly the 3 arms zone, and I'm standing directly on the road that leads to the National Assembly and the presidential villa. Everything seems normal here. clusters of security men scattered around town. Yeah, I think they doubled down their efforts, and the amount of security men here, they are at ×2 of what we saw here. Security has been beefed up. Policemen particularly are on standby. You could see them clenching to 1 canister or 2 of tear gas. The entire activity here, it seems normal for now. We've not seen any protester here, and we've not seen any individual come out of their houses. But however, businesses here are on lockdown. The only essential services available are those who sell foods. Particularly banks in this area are shut down. Offices in this area are shut down. Security men have besieged the area.
Okay, pretty interesting, and I hope that it stays calm, all through. Was there any activity there yesterday?
Yeah, the activities here were intense yesterday. The showdown happened right here, where the man who testified earlier that he was locked in a barbed wire and assaulted by officers of Nigerian police force. This place was a shutdown of activities. It was raining canisters on canisters of tear gas as well as smoke. And this were particularly before me here was where they created the temporary barbed wire they used to demarcate the protesters and the men of the anti-riot squad of the Nigerian police force. It was here where the men of the anti-riot squad of the police force had a showdown yesterday where they were tossing tear gas canisters to protesters, and the protesters were returning it. But it seems calm here now, and we are optimistic that it might be for the rest of the day. But however, events here will have the major say of how the activities here will be.
All right, Joshua, thanks very much for stopping by. You would continue to monitor things over there, and if things develop, I'm sure you'll be eager to share with us. Thanks for your time. All right, let's go back to Mr. Shupitom, and just wrap up the conversation this morning. Today, is likely to be day 2. Government's reaction has been silent, and of course, the reaction from the police. If you had the ear of Mr. President, what would you advise that he immediately does to prevent this from going even further?
I think, look, just an address, just address the country as vilified as President Muhammadu Buhari was, when NSAS happened. At some point, I think about the 3rd day, we heard from him. The Lagos State government spoke to the people, So talking to people helps assuage anger, helps, keep tensions at bay. Of course, it's important what you say to them as well, So the demands are there. What are the things that can immediately be done, out of all of those demands?
And from his speech, do you think that can maybe impact investors and impact the stock market?
Yeah, absolutely. If he comes out and speaks with empathy and shows that he is in control of what's happening in his country, then that will signal, the international community investors, even local investors, that, hey, maybe these things won't go completely out of control, and maybe this place is a safe place to bring our money, So that it's also important to say that people, especially for the organizers, of this protest, must continue to work very hard, not to give the security forces a reason to attack them by, as much as possible, trying to keep the protesters as peaceful and civil as possible. There will be attempts to infiltrate. There's no doubt about that. And this is something we all knew from the beginning. So what measures can the organizers put in place to abate that as much as possible? That's also important to put out there. So it's not only on the government side. I think protesters as well must understand that they have a responsibility to themselves not to destroy, the public property and the peace and all of that we have in the country.
Maybe we'll hear from President on day 2 or maybe day 3, like
hope so.
you had initially talked about with President Buhari. Thank you very much, Segun Soputon, for joining us. We've come to the end of today's show. Thank you for your time with us. We'll be back again same time tomorrow. If you are protesting and going out to protest, please ensure that it is peaceful, that you, as much as you can, you do not in any way engage in violence. And please remember that you protect yourself, protect your life. It's he who is alive that can live to see another day to protest for their right. Yeah. My name is Olive Emodi.
And I am Osao Gilbon. Just to once again reiterate the importance of protesting peacefully. If you have to protest, it is your constitutionally guaranteed right. If you have to, please ensure that it is peaceful and discourage any ideas, any thoughts, any moves to make it violent, to loot, to steal, to in any way promote violence, please discourage it.
And just to also mention that we continue the broadcast. We're going to be talking more about the protests for the rest of the day. So please stay tuned and do well to continue the conversation with us on social media as well. For us, we'll be gone and we'll be back on Monday.